And that, young lady, looks like a spoonful of diamonds. It's glistening, it's glazed, it is still incredibly moist. It's absolutely delicious. The cook of the fish is perfect, the rice is delicious, the broth is fragrant. It's pretty remarkable. The only thing I don't like about this dish, and I'm sorry to say it, but I've got to share this dish with Christina.
Oh, you scared me to death. Oh my God.
Can you buy a palate and give someone the most extraordinary finesse through buying that for them? Fucking no chance. Can you educate a palate? Yeah, you can. I'm not a TV chef. That may sound a bit bizarre. Behind anything you see on TV, I have a wealth of knowledge and phenomenal restaurants that if there's ever a moment that I was never going to be working on TV, you know, I have a fucking day job. My tiny restaurant in the heart of Chelsea cooks for 20,000 people a year. Yet millions of people see me on a week across a TV screen, across 150 different countries, but no one fully understands what it's like, where I've been, and what makes me fucking tick. What you're gonna see for the first time ever is real detail, real understanding, and finesse brought together from start to finish. Everything I've learned, understood, grabbed, stolen, perfected, you know, is laid bare across this masterclass. You'll see it and you'll understand it. And no matter what you see or hear or read or watch on the television, you'll see a side to me across this class that I don't think has ever been shown before because I'm uninterrupted. I've just spent the last 30 years busting my balls off to get on the plate what I'm about to show you, and watch, but watch fucking carefully. I'm Gordon Ramsay. This is my masterclass. I loved food growing up. I mean, I was an amazing eater. Mum was a cook in a local restaurant in Stratford-on-Avon, and I used to stand by her side after soccer practice every night, literally picking up bits so she'd feed them to me on a spoon. I was always asking Mum, look, how do you get that there? How does that become so tasty? And what is it about your bread and butter pudding that I can't stop eating? I was a big, tall, skinny bean, big, bowl haircut, blue eyes, blonde hair, 6 foot, size 15 feet, and destined to play soccer for a living. So I started to think that food was my life when my first love was taken away. I had a huge injury, ruptured Achilles. I tore my cartilage. I snapped my cruciate ligament, and sport wasn't happening. So my parents insisted that I enrolled my last year at school into a foundation course in catering. And this foundation course took me in so many different directions because, you know, I was barely 16. And I had to spend time in a restaurant working as a waiter, spend time in the kitchen. And it was a foundation course before the full-time course at college the following year. So I was getting excited. And all of a sudden I had to go and spend 6 weeks in a local restaurant. And it was an absolute disaster because there was this Italian maitre d' that said to me, Ramsay, you know, you in a dining room as a waiter, you know, you like horse shit. And I said, excuse me? He said, yeah, you're like a piece of horse shit. You're always in the middle of the road. And I didn't quite understand what that meant. It certainly wasn't a compliment, but 6 weeks later, I found myself in the kitchen. I was prepping veg, and I moved fast. I was the kind of guy that, you know, at 17, 18 years of age, I wanted to get on to the next thing. So show me this. Let me have a go at it. Things started to happen. You know, I was in this incredible sort of, it was almost like a local country house hotel, and it was fast and furious, but the food wasn't that good, but it was definitely the best restaurant that was happening locally. This big head chef, his name was Andy, used to take me home on the back of his motorbike every night, and I used to cling on to this big fat guy in the back of this motorbike, shitting myself that he was going to kill me going around these corners, thinking, this is incredible. I'm not living at home. I've got my first job in cooking. This head chef is a maniac, and you know, I actually think I'm a pretty good cook. One day, Andy sat me down and said, look, you have to leave. And I said, what do you mean I have to leave? He said, you have to go to London. You've got to get out of this environment because you are good at what you do. Don't stay here. If you stay here, you're going to become entrapped, and it's not going to be bright for you. I, from a chef's point of view, cut my training short because I fell in love, I got married, I had kids, and I couldn't move. You've got this chance. Get your ass to London. I started writing letters. I wrote to the Dorchester, I wrote to the Savoy, I wrote to the Mayfair Hotel in London. And then finally, one letter came back saying, we'd like to see you for an interview. You've been taken on as a second commie grade 2. What the fuck that meant, I don't know. Second commie grade 2. Anyway, the salary was, I still have the letter today. This letter, you know, at 18 years of age, earning £5,452 a year as a second commie grade 2, that was it. So it was dinners for like 200-300 guests at a time, but that was all sort of pre-cooked, sliced, and then reheated. And then it was room service from the same kitchen. So trust me, you know, I can tell you everything from an A to Z in terms of how to nail Arabic dishes, every goddamn side to a perfect club sandwich, from eggs Benedict to club sandwich to steak tartare. This stuff I was doing with my eyes closed. About 6 months later, as I was finishing my shift after a big banquet, the grill chef phoned in sick. He got knocked off his motorbike, so I got put on the grill in this a la carte restaurant. And I was so excited. So I was grilling entrecotes, ribeye, chateaubriands, paillards of chicken, and just all of a sudden standing alone in front of this huge grill, manning the grill. It took me literally 20 minutes to get up to speed. And I was dropped in the middle of service. And that's when things started to really happen. I got promoted outside of the banquet kitchen into the main restaurant kitchen, and spent the next 12 months in an a la carte restaurant, a restaurant called The Chateau in the middle of Mayfair, inside this 5-star hotel. And that was it. My journey had just begun. There was a magazine, a Hotel Caterer, which is a trade magazine. And on the cover of this magazine was a guy called Marco Pierre White. And he had just opened his first restaurant in Harvest. This guy was like 26 years of age, just won his first Michelin star. I started reading it. I literally left the hotel that morning and went straight to a phone box, big, bright phone box, right in the middle of Berkeley Square. And I phoned the restaurant. And I begged him for a job, because that was the next stage. That was the kind of guy that I wanted to work with, that was on a mission. It all happened so quickly because within 24 hours, I was sat with him, I was having an interview. He told me I could start on Monday. I said, I can't just walk out my job. He said, if you want the job bad enough, you'll come. I did. I walked out. When I first started working for Marco Pierre White, you know, I'd had the basics from the 5-star hotel, but now I was going into the Premier League. I mean, he was on a mission, just won 1 star, he was going to 2-star, eventually he was going to 3-star Michelin. And so you cook for your life. I mean, we went to hell and back on a daily basis. He was the biggest bastard I've ever worked for and the best mentor that anyone's ever been. And also, he took me under his wing, and I needed more. So I needed the next level. And Marco gave me that on a plate, where he put me into the best French restaurant anywhere in the country with 3 Michelin stars. And that was my trip to France, because I got to work for two brothers that were legendary in London, 3 Michelin stars that would guarantee me a place in France. And that's all I wanted to do, because that's what made me the happiest. When I went to Gavroche, it was a completely different style of cooking, and a way that it threw me because it was so well organized. Marco was frivolous and very wasteful, and sort of, he just wanted the best of the best. He'd never use tails, he'd always use the center cuts and wouldn't use trimmings. And I got to Gavroche and it was like, no, we're going to use trimmings, we're going to use the center cut, and we're wasting nothing. When I left Marco to go to Gavroche, it was just all of a sudden this whole repertoire of this big, broad horizon. At Marco's, we had like 5 starters, 5 main courses, and 3 desserts. Gavroche, we had like 12 starters, 18 main courses, and then 10, 12 desserts. So it was so important to see that. And then I thought to myself, do you know what? I've mastered Marco, I've mastered the Roux brothers. I want to become French. I swear to God, I want to become French. I want to go and live in France. I want to stink of garlic. I want a French girlfriend, and I want to become French. And that, for me, was that in many ways, that was my calling. That was the bit that really helped shape me up. I went straight to Paris. 23 years of age. I got taken on as I think this one was like a 4th commie, grade 7. It couldn't go any lower. I got employed at Restaurant Guy Savoy in Paris. It was a restaurant that was traveling from 2-star to 3-star. And so the chef was on the hot plate. He was on the pass and everything went through his fingertips. They put me in front of a fucking 3-deck layered, 15 sorbet machines with different sorbets turning, and my head was buzzing until I learned how to speak French. And then they got me out of the pastry and put me straight onto the fish. And by the time I got onto that fish station, I was bilingual. I went to France to become French and to study the Bible of haute cuisine, the founders of gastronomy, the nation that gave birth to fine dining. And I knew I could lose myself. I was getting into debt. Of course I was. I was clocking up an overdraft, and every month, Guy Savoy, the restaurant, used to reimburse me 50% of my travel. I was like going cap in hand asking for like, $10 refund on this ticket. And I used to shit myself if I'd lost my pass each month, because I knew that one ticket would get me a meal on a Sunday night. For every 6 months I stayed in France, I was getting myself more and more in debt. But the knowledge was just, it was incredible. After working for Guy Savoy, I then went on to work for one of the greatest chefs anywhere in the world, Joe Robuchon. And it was another phenomenon, another 3-star Michelin chef. And that's when I started just exploding with ideas, because there was a bit of Gavroche, a bit of Guy, a bit of Marco, a bit of Joe Robuchon. All of a sudden, shit, that's 4, 5 amazing chefs that have been brilliant in my mind. And then I started thinking about pull back with this and change that. And so I was bursting with energy to come on and hopefully one day do something for myself. Welcome to the engine room, my kitchen at home. How do I teach you everything I know? How do I give you an insight that you've never seen before anywhere? So thinking about where this can take place, I didn't want to go into the latest restaurant opening in Singapore or Hong Kong. It's not London, it's not Paris, it's home. That's the most important thing for me, to give you an insight to what I do at home and to show you where it all starts and finishes on a daily basis. So yes, this kitchen looks incredible, but fuck that for a moment. Don't get wrapped up with how things look. We designed this kitchen with ease, because I wanted an open space. I wanted, freedom. I didn't want big walls and corners and hoods down to here. I wanted peace. I wanted space and openness with light, green, mountains, sunshine, and more importantly, a stove, a piano we call it, something to play on, a stage. I've got the kids' names on there.
So every time I open up the oven door, check the temperature, I can see the kids on there. I've actually got their names on the front of my stove. It's personal. You know, when you cook, it's not from a script, it's from the heart. So everything for me is about having that closeness and making it more real. Look at this tiny little ring here. It's an electric ring. It's a thing that you switch on and it gets hot within seconds. But every time I look at this little ring, it's no different to the little camping stove I had in my flat in Paris. This flat in Paris was literally from here to that window. So I'm in my comfort zone here because that's all I had. This one electric burner, this tiny little stove that I used to practice my risottos on a Sunday night, nip down to the market Saturday lunchtime, buy mushrooms, buy bits of cheese, and then come back and cook this incredible risotto. That's how much it means to me to cook at home and to give you a first-hand insight to what makes me tick. So what's the basic essential of a great kitchen? For me, it's about space. And also, when you start off with that incredible ingredient, don't go searching for your pots and your pans. Have everything out in front of you. And even if it's a small kitchen, lay it out in a way that it's like theatre. You need everything at hand, so you don't want to miss those valuable seconds diving in and making sure you've got everything you need to perfect that dish. So what makes a great dish is down to your pots and pans. You know, a great non-stick, that can go so many directions. It's incredible. What do I like about these kind of pans? The handle's key. That gives so much more confidence. A great non-stick. 4 essential pans, non-stick. Saucepan for making great sauces. Beurre blancs, reducing stuff down. And then, of course, a great frying pan. Brushed stainless steel, thick, heavy bottom, which is a great heat conductor. And, of course, a lid. Whether it's steaming, poaching, frying, you need that lid. Just the glass on top of that helps to visually understand the speed that you need to go up or turn it down. A small saucepan for tiny things like great scrambled eggs, poaching stuff, great, especially for 1 or 2 portions. And then, of course, the knives. I'd rather have a smaller collection of knives that are high quality than a vast collection that don't really do the business. A great steel, absolutely paramount. Every time putting that nice little edge on those knives. Every time I use the knives, I sharpen them before and after, keep that little edge on there. A great handle, a weighted handle so you can feel comfortable and confident cutting. An amazing, I suppose, bread knife, serrated edge, which is great for slicing, carving, and great for large vegetables. And then an amazing sort of filleting, chopping knife. It's got a flexible blade. Therefore, if it's fish you're filleting, chopping, peeling vegetables, it's got that wonderful, great flexible blade. Boning knife, great for deboning chicken, pigeon, duck. Great for filleting smaller fish as well. Again, a much more flexible blade. And then this little baby, a little paring knife, great for peeling and also tiny balls of garlic or little vegetables turning. It's a great handy little knife. And this is a little sort of microplane, great for zesting and great for light sprinkling of cheese over dishes. And then something all chefs need, a nice pair of scissors. Whether you're trimming the fish, trimming the meat, or even cutting herbs, a great pair of scissors is paramount. A blowtorch, sometimes finishing fish or gratinating potatoes, or even finishing a creme brulee. Little smoking gun, if you want to show off for a dinner party, you want a salad of smoked eel to be finished, and you just, get this incredible apple chip smoking on the plate, out for some fun. Now, I like to cook with everything in front of me, get everything set up, and even the ingredients out as well. Cook, saute, oven underneath, and then the fridge. I want the fridge literally behind me. This setup here is no different to what it's like in my restaurants in a way that we stand and we cook. We don't need to move from the piano that far to perfect. But even down to the oven, even with the tiny as the kitchen at home, spend money on great pans. You'll be surprised how good the food tastes when it's cooked inside a decent pan. Spend money on a knife. Spend money on a decent pepper mill. Don't buy shit salt. Get some great rock salt. Take a lemon, zest the lemon, put it into your salt and elevate just the salt. So don't think you need a $100,000 kitchen to cook good food. And how many times you heard that idea? all the gear and no fucking idea. So I'm a little bit more cautious when things get over-glamorized, that I strip all that shit back and focus on the job in hand. Great pan, great knife, great chopping board. Scrape all this glamour out of this kitchen and give me this little electric ring. I can guarantee I can still cook my ass off way better than you could ever think, because that's where I started. Vegetables, you know, from a chef's point of view, I've never bought a sliced or diced vegetable in any supermarket and never be put off by vegetables looking ugly, because sometimes the uglier the vegetable, the more flavor it has in them. When you see vegetables and they all look the same and they all look identical, then it's not a great sign. The secret to buying great ingredients, great vegetables, is to make sure that it runs across the season. And it's so difficult nowadays because they're flying ingredients from all over the world, but it needs to be in season to maximize on the flavor, and then use it less and enjoy it more than having it available 12 months a year. Butternut squash. When I think of butternut squash, I think of autumnal deliciousness. I think of risottos, soups. Would I use a butternut squash in the middle of the summer? Definitely not. Also, how do you identify with such a tough skin on the outside that it's good? Well, turn it upside down and use your thumb and push in there. That should be nice and firm and not soft and squidgy. And then the whole feel of the vegetable, not bruised, literally picked days ago, and more importantly, the condition of it. Now, whether you slice them in half, roast them, drizzle them in olive oil, herbs, scrape them out, they're not supposed to look pretty when you buy them. It's down to you to break them down and understand that, you know, sometimes when they look awkward, from a chef's point of view, that's what delivers the most amazing flavor. Celery roots, possibly one of the ugliest vegetables anywhere in the world, but incredible. Again, bright green tips, freshly cut, freshly picked, and nice and firm. The smell of that is almost slightly earthy. It's a root vegetable that's grown 2/3 under the soil, so it needs cleaning. But top and tail that, peel off the outside hard skin, you see this beautiful, bright, white, incredible vegetable underneath. We actually thicken a lot of sauces with this roasted. It delivers a unique flavor, and also it's incredibly healthy, but it's durable. It's not the kind of vegetable that disintegrates within minutes. Sometimes baby vegetables, you know, they disappear after 3 or 4 minutes of cooking. This is incredible. Even roasting them whole as well for great vegetarian dishes is a dream come true. When you look at these new season baby carrots, heirloom carrots, you know, tops, plentiful, bright green, but look, flourishing, looking slightly wrinkled at the ends. They're the roots. Don't be put off by them. That's a great sign when you see vegetables plucked from the earth and those roots are intact. That's a dream come true. They don't need peeling. Smell them, they smell of the earth. The tops, great for soups, great for salads, but every time I see a young cook peel a heirloom carrot or a baby carrot, that's the goodness. The goodness is in the skin. They just need to be lightly brushed. How would I prep them? I would top and gently towel them there. Then I'd get a toothbrush and just lightly brush over them, run them under cold water and roast them in the pan for about 3.5 to 4 minutes and leave them soaking in that olive oil. That flavor is incredible. Stunning, absolutely stunning. What's the worst thing you can do to a baby carrot? Dice it, puree it. When vegetables are that good, serve them whole, roasted on a plate, speaks volumes, and you've got to respect what you've just picked. Beautiful, bulbous fennel. This thing has an amazing dimension because these are great as a fragrant herb to finish sauces with, salads with, vinaigrettes. And then this, aniseed, deep, rich flavor vegetable, brilliant shaved thinly in salads, great roasted as well. An amazing vegetable for puree, brilliant with fish and meats, and that's quite rare. Again, visually, why do I buy that? A, it looks a mess, it looks ugly, but the flavor being delivered from that is incredible. And then this beautiful bulbous root that roasted whole, caramelized, pureed, even into a fennel soup finished with Granny Smith apple, is to die for. Beets, look at these. Beautiful golden beets and classic beets. Again, there's something to be said with these beet tops. Great for salads. You know, spinach is something that we use a lot of. These beetroot tops are great sautéed, sliced up, chiffonaded, and then roasted with some garlic and some shallots to die for. And then these beautiful things here. Don't peel a baby beet. It's the worst thing you could ever do. They disappear. Lightly scrub them. Get the toothbrush out, clean them up, into the oven, lightly drizzle with olive oil, a touch of balsamic vinegar to bring out the sweetness, and then roasted. Served whole like that with the roots, there's nothing wrong with it. So don't worry about trying to make it look neat on a plate. Make it look like a beetroot on the plate. Keep it looking natural. Really important. Incredible flavor. And look, why would I buy these? You know, they're bright green. The roots are plentiful. Nothing's disintegrated. They're full of nutrients. They're full of water. And the flavor is to die for. Tomatoes. For me, when I look at a tomato, I think the uglier the tomato is, the better the flavor. Now, of course, these are heirloom tomatoes. They're incredible. Big, plump tomatoes, or your average cherry tomato. If you can buy tomatoes on the vine, cooking them on the vine, keeping them on the vine, keep them in a warm, dark place, literally helps to ripen up those tomatoes. And whether you put them in a salad or in a sauce or even in a vinaigrette, they're delicious. And then these, the endives, chicory in some parts of the world, red Belgian endive, yellow Belgian endive, very bitter, incredible with fish. But how do we perfect them? You know, slicing them and running them through lime juice, olive oil in a salad is beautiful, but there's a magical way of lifting these up to zenith. I slice them into quarters. I lightly dust them with powdered sugar. I drizzle them with a bit of vinegar. I salt and I sugar them and I leave them to sit for about 4 or 5 minutes. The salt extracts the bitterness, the sugar intensifies the flavor, and then I flash fry them in a non-stick pan. And you've got this caramelized endive that is brilliant with a light poultry, a beautiful chicken breast, brilliant with fish as well. And these beautiful red endive are great with game because game's rich and heavy and sedated. This gives it that nice lightness, that bitterness, but dusted with powdered sugar, gently roasted, finished with a touch of orange juice. Incredible. Eggplant, or in Europe, known as aubergine. Again, look at it. It doesn't look the most attractive, but it is absolutely incredible. Cut in half, slightly seasoned, and then roasted in the oven for 25 to 30 minutes. Gives the most amazing eggplant puree to die for. Yellow beans. Everybody sort of freaks out with the color of these yellow beans. It dictates the seasonal time. It's going into winter, coming out of autumn, and it's an amazing bean. Great for salads, delicious in vinaigrettes, and even as a garnish for a roasted chicken, yellow bean salad to die for. How do we elevate food beyond belief? We use a fragrance. A chef's fragrance are herbs. So every chef has an array of herbs that is their scent, it's their fragrance, and it's almost like a lady putting perfume on. You know, what herbs do to a dish is incredible. It lifts it beyond belief. I tend to use soft herbs across the summer, heavier, rich herbs across the winter, your rosemaries, your thymes, and then the mint. That's a great herb to use across summer and winter, especially in desserts. But if you can't grow them, how do you buy them? Always look for them intact. Never look for herbs that have been bruised. The minute a herb bruises, it's lost its scent. It's no good. Bruising means if it's been dented or pressed upon or marked or it's been sliced, it starts to wilt. The minute the herbs are cut, then all the goodness starts to drain out. So you've literally got 24 hours to use those herbs. Otherwise, the flavor's gone. So they may look good on the outside, but bruised herbs, It's like when you slice herbs, you need to slice them with finesse. You can bruise while slicing, and if you bruise them, then what happens to herbs? They change a really strange color. They go black and they can ruin a dish. So you have to be very careful. Slicing, cutting herbs, chopping herbs, or even just finishing dishes with herbs. But every chef grows their own herbs, and they're so easy. They're low maintenance, but the power and the flavor they deliver is incredible. Second to none. Flat leaf parsley is incredible because it's almost wasted when you finally chop it. The goodness stays on the board. So I'm a great believer in dropping parsley into dishes whole, so the flavor of that parsley comes out into the dish. Flat leaf parsley is a dream because it's just so earthy, fresh, and it's packed with fragrance. Over chop it, and this is a dish that's missing out. Tarragon. It's got that nice aniseed fragrance to it that is perfect for fish dishes. It's the hallmark herb to a great béarnaise sauce. Fresh tarragon rubbed between your fingers, and then, man, it's fragrant. It's quite zingy, it's quite sharp, it's very pungent, and it's absolutely delicious. And it transforms a cream sauce to something magical. Great inside vinaigrettes and great inside butters. Making a tarragon butter and finishing the steak with a tarragon butter is to die for. It looks quite rough, it looks quite intimidating, but we call it a soft herb. It's in the same bracket as chervil parsley because it's a very delicate, dainty herb. Incredible. And then to the mother of all herbs, one of the most used herbs anywhere on the planet, and it's grown everywhere, fresh rosemary. When I first opened my restaurant in Chelsea, in London, all these amazing posh gardens were laden with fresh rosemary, lavender, thyme, and I used to ask the cooks to get in a little bit earlier, run past those amazing gardens and steal the herbs from their gardens. And then when I saw the guests arrive 3 or 4 hours later, I'd let them know that the actual rosemary across the lamb is from your garden that I stole this morning. Every household should have rosemary because it's the kind of herb that, it's sustainable, it's robust, it's fragrant, and when you nip it together, just that oil that comes out of it, and you see the stain on the fingers, it's so fragrant. It's beautiful, very strong. It needs to be sort of almost used less than any other herb because it's so strong. But look, here's how we use it. We take the rosemary, we hold it up like that, we strip it of its stem from the top, pull, and look, it all slides off, so you're left with this beautiful rosemary in your hand. But this is beautiful because you can pierce a piece of fish. You can stick that inside a leg of lamb. You can put that through a sea bass. Once it's cooked and roasted, pop it out. So it's an added extra that you can use that is beyond belief. And then this here, the actual rosemary, I love just chopping it once and then throwing that inside the sauce, inside a vinaigrette, or even waiting till a leg of lamb is minutes from coming out of the oven, chop the rosemary, sprinkle it on top of that crackling, beautiful leg of lamb, and you'll see it perfumed beyond belief. I'm a firm believer in using herbs, almost like seasoning, touch of fragrance across every step of the way, and do not put them in at the beginning because they've lost their magic at the end. And we should look at herbs almost like that spray of perfume that lights up the room, and once that dish has passed the customer's nose, everyone's thinking, what is that incredible smell? Rosemary delivers that. Onto this beautiful herb, one of the most popular in any pastry section, and that's fresh mint. Now, mint is brilliant for protein. Mint is fantastic for ice cream, it's great for desserts, but it is so incredibly pungent that it is just almost as strong as rosemary. But when you rub it together in your fingers, you see what happens. This green, vibrant juice comes out. And honestly, flavoring ice creams with mint at the end, flavoring vinaigrettes with mint at the end, look what comes out. It's like this incredible liquid. And it's fragrant beyond belief, but it lightens up the dish. We use a lot of mint in cooking to take the richness from things. And then the dill. Dill, we know, is brilliant for when you're using fish. It gives it that nice freshness, that fragrance, that slightly lemony as well. But it's a wonderful herb that sits perfectly with salmon, sole, fresh dill. Again, finally chop it, you've destroyed it. So we pick off the leaves and just drop them in, almost like snow coming off the tree, just into the sauce. When you drop herbs into a sauce like that and bring the sauce up to temperature without boiling it, the fragrance inside is to die for. And then this beauty, this is wild thyme. And look at it. It's like a tall, thin Christmas tree on a diet. Incredible. When you rub it between your fingers again, you've got this aromatic sort of cross between a rosemary parsley with a touch of mint in there, but it's zesty. It gives off a perfume, almost like it's been sort of steeped in lemon juice. So fragrant, so delicious. And one of the very few herbs that goes brilliantly well with fish and meat, even in desserts now. Roasting berries with thyme, thyme ice cream, thyme crumble mix, thyme cobbler is incredible. Now, how do we get those little buds off there? We hold the top of the tree down, use your fingers and pull. And again, gently pull through. Got these wonderful little thyme flowers with this little thyme stick. Again, brilliant for piercing scallops with. Brilliant for putting these little tiny sort of cocktail sticks through the lobster when cooking with it. And again, it just releases this incredible perfume that sits inside the lobster tail. And then the thyme flowers, they're dainty, they're firm, they're very, very robust, but put them in the finger and rub them together again. You've got this thyme oil sort of cascading across your fingers. It's incredible. It actually smells like it's a blend of 3 or 4 herbs. Thyme is that pungent, but it's a bit of a chef's go-to tool, especially for fish and especially for meat, and now even across so many desserts. Amazing ingredients. Let's cook. Poached egg on toast with wild mushrooms. There's an art to poaching the most perfect egg. The most important thing is that water needs to be a gentle rolling boil. Now, mushrooms need help. 30% of a mushroom is water, so get the pan on and get it piping hot. I like to fry my mushrooms in some bacon. When you render the fat down in the bacon, that flavour across the mushrooms is extraordinary. So, like always, 90% of the battle is in getting organised. Get your water up to the boil, get your toaster warm, get your pan on, and get everything around you so you're not hunting for anything. So everything's in eye shot, from left to right, from the eggs, to the seasoning, to the touch of vinegar, to the mushrooms, and then your bacon. First off, get the pan nice and hot, in with your bacon. Now, bacon in. 2 things here with the bacon. A, we get to render the fat down, and B, it's slightly salty, so it automatically seasons your mushrooms. It's a great advantage. Get that bacon nice and crispy. And sometimes I like to use a smoked bacon with the mushrooms. So I've got a naturally cured bacon. Smoked bacon, equally, is so much more sort of fragrant, especially across those mushrooms. Wild mushrooms this time of year are beautiful. From the most amazing pleurots, trompettes, girolles, and even the best oyster mushrooms, but they need help. 30% of a mushroom is water, so it needs that high intensity. Once we've got colour on the bacon, add your mushrooms straight in. Now, keep that heat nice and high. And the secret here now is to make sure that we literally saute those mushrooms and get some colour on there. A touch of salt and a touch of pepper. Mushrooms with eggs on toast. Delicious, really delicious. The secret is to make sure we get some really nice colour onto those mushrooms. I've started off in the bacon fat. Once I've coloured the mushrooms, I'm going to finish it with a touch of butter. Now, toast. What's the perfect toast for a chef? It has to be brioche, because brioche is so much more richer. It's packed with butter, but the flavour toasted is extraordinary. Also, think of that richness about the eggs, the yolk bursting over those mushrooms. Mind-blowing. Now, brioche in. Toast. Nice. Mushrooms, you can hear that noise. That's not the fat, that's the water coming out of the mushrooms. Really important. But we get rid of that horrible, watery flavor a mushroom can bring. Now, look at that color there. That's where I need to now add just a touch of butter. So that starts to caramelize them beautifully. Gives it that wonderful flavor, that nice beurre noisette. Look at the mushrooms. Mushrooms are beautifully done. I'm gonna drain them off in a minute. Check my toast. Now, mushrooms need to be drained, okay? Get rid of that excess fat. Some kitchen paper, out, on. Nothing worse than cooking these mushrooms beautifully and then serving them greasy. Paper, mushrooms out, and literally drain off all that fat so you've got that beautiful fried deliciousness in those mushrooms, sat nice and crispy. That gives your poached egg some really nice texture, beautiful color on those mushrooms. Smell is incredible. Now, toast, egg and water. Out with the brioche. Now, get everything set up, because the last thing you do is poach the egg. You don't poach the egg first and then start frying your mushrooms. Take that beautiful slice of brioche and just run it inside that pan for 30 seconds. Get that flavor of those mushrooms in. Sit that back on top, and then, very carefully, add your mushrooms on top of your toast. Now we've got that flavor from the bacon, the mushrooms, the butter, and the crispiness and the texture is incredible. So, growing up as a kid, mushrooms didn't really excite me. But then when I started living in France, seeing the different flavors and textures across the season is quite mind-blowing. Beautiful ceps, mushroom powder, dried mushrooms, morels, chanterelles, girolles. It was just incredible to see such an amazing array of mushrooms that were seasonal. Now, once you're ready, mushrooms on toast. Now for the most important part, the poached egg. Water, gently boiling. Lightly season that water, and then the vinegar. The vinegar helps to strengthen the egg white and enrobes that white around the yolk. Gently stir the water just until you've got momentum in the pan. Take your egg, very carefully crack it into the bowl, and in a bowl allows you to lower it into the water gently. So, in and lower it in and let it go. And what happens now is the egg white starts to wrap around the egg yolk and encases this beautiful poached egg that makes it look almost like a ball of mozzarella. Keep the water gently rolling, a gentle soft boil, and then just turn it down. We still poach our eggs to order in restaurants. If you're doing this at home, you can poach these in advance and drop them in to lightly seasoned water for about 60 seconds to reheat. But for me, poaching an egg is about finesse, understanding, and I don't like cooking egg yolks twice, so we drop it into that water, gently rolling. Mushrooms ready. Before the egg comes out, a piece of tissue paper that drains off excess water. You can't get all that flavor in the mushrooms and then put it on a soggy egg. So make sure that you drain off the egg. Remember, mushrooms are crispy, toast is just nice and crispy, and I want that egg yolk literally oozing out all over my mushrooms. Now, I'm gonna lift it up, I'm gonna check to see if it's cooked. If it stays nice and firm in my spoon, it's cooked. If it starts to wobble, put it back in the water for another 10 seconds. And, look, 10 more seconds. When it starts to lapse and fall through the spoon, you know it's undercooked. So literally 10 seconds will make a big difference. Set it beautifully. Now, come underneath with a spoon, gently turn that over, and almost presentation side up. And look, there, turn the spoon left, turn it right, and then very carefully bring it out onto your tissued paper. Lightly season the egg here, salt and pepper. And then look, I'm just gonna get some of those juices from the mushrooms over my egg. And then very carefully use the back of the spoon, use the paper, and lift that up nicely, very carefully. And look, sit that on top of your mushrooms. And that is how to poach an egg. Now, this is where the poached egg goes to a completely different level. Mushrooms crispy, yolk is going to cascade over my mushrooms and give it that incredible glaze beyond belief. And that is a poached egg to die for. Knife skills. It takes years to understand how to use a knife properly, but the basics are so important. Holding a knife is like wearing a pair of gloves. A pair of gloves that are too big, you feel awkward. A pair of gloves that are too tight, then you're uncomfortable. So holding a knife is like driving in a car. You've got to feel so comfortable on that wheel, but more importantly, you have to relax your hands. So for me, it's all about the handle. When I feel comfortable with the grip, then I've got so much more precision. Holding a knife awkwardly, it's going to end up in a bad result, whether you cut yourself or you're going to make a huge mistake across the ingredients. So it's about feeling comfortable. I cut with my left hand and my right hand. I'm predominantly left-handed, left-footed, but for me, it's all about the feel and literally holding the knife open, gripping, and literally understanding the motion of down and across, down and across. But first of all, even down to where your index finger sits, for me, it's about the comfort zone. If you can't feel the knife properly and you don't feel comfortable, then don't slice, don't chop, and do not move fast with that knife. Get really comfortable and then let the hand melt into the handle and then position it. But practice 2 or 3 times, not forcing the knife down, lightly holding the handle, gripping it nicely, not too intense, thumb on top, thumb on the side, index finger underneath, tuck those fingers in and just get used to that position. Once you're comfortable with the motion of where you're going, you can literally close your eyes and feel the knife every slice. The opposite hand, we need the protection. Fingers, 1 in front, 2 behind. And this little knuckle here, that's your protector. You never slice with your fingers exposed. You never chop with your fingers out. You never chop with 1 finger out. It's always 3 fingers down, and this beautiful knuckle is the guiding light across that knife. Chopping is not about learning to chop fast. It's chopping with accuracy and understanding that every slice is pivotal, every movement is crucial, but you need to be comfortable. And relax the shoulders. Upright, shoulders back, and move into it. When I walk into one of my kitchens, I can spot a mile away, whether it's Claire Smith at Royal Hospital Road, running her brigade, or a kitchen in Vegas, I can tell you from a mile away how smart they are at cutting, chopping, slicing, just on their posture. You need to be upright, you need to be in control, and you need to be focused. These are the most dangerous utensils. And, you know, cutting deep, it's done in seconds because they are so razor sharp. The most important thing is securing the board. Sounds a bit weird, but it's to stop this sliding action. So, very simply, if that board slides whilst we're cutting, you completely slice your finger off. So you need to be really firm with the board staying in position and, more importantly, not sliding. So many accidents are caused with boards sliding all over the place. You cannot afford for that to happen. If you're cutting a butternut squash and the board slips, bang, off comes the finger. So secure the board. The simple way is literally take a touch of paper, lightly dampen it, lightly, and then lift up the board, lay down the paper, nice and flat, and then place the board on top. And that will not move. Every time I use a knife, I sharpen it. That keeps the edge on that knife. You don't run the knife into the ground where it becomes blunt and then it's impossible to get that edge on there. That edge, trust me, is crucial. That's what helps to finesse dicing, slicing, chopping when you've got such a beautiful edge on the knife. So, pick up your steel. Look at the base of the knife there. 6 o'clock, push away, come back. Push away, come back. And tilt the edge of the knife ever so slightly. Forget the speed, okay? Don't rush getting that speed. Sometimes everyone starts to rush because it looks good and you want to sound amazing, but forget the speed. Hold the steel, your knife sharpener, like you would with your knife, nice and firmly. Make sure those thumbs are tucked behind. This bit here, that's the guard. You never sharpen a knife like this. You never have those fingers exposed. You keep the fingers firmly behind the steel. Now, position the knife at the base, lightly tilt the blade, push away. Really important, we push away, covering the entire blade. And that edge, the top part of that blade is just getting edgier. So I'm sort of lightly grinding. If I come too deep and I start like that, I'm destroying my knife. The knife needs to be almost flat with a little lift. I use this finger here and I lift like that. And that guides. And then I come back into the position here and I pull back down towards me. Away, towards, away, towards, away, towards. Now, as I come back towards, be careful you don't come too far down. Use the steel. For me, the longer the steel, the easier it is. So, from there, away, back towards me, away, towards. And then, once you've mastered, then you can come up and literally change positions, but start off horizontally, away, towards you, away, towards you, and keeping that knife nice and flat. And you can see the edge there. Now, slicing a shallot. The most important thing when slicing, you need to make sure that the ingredient is stable. Don't slice on an edge, don't slice on a round, never slice anything wobbling, something too high, forget it. To slice a shallot or an onion perfectly, first thing you do is slice it in half. That way, it creates a nice flat base. Turn that over, 3-finger rule, 1 in front, 2 behind. I use the tip of the knife and I'm slicing down. That motion, all that way through, keeping the shallot nicely compact together. Down. Place the shallot back into its original shape. Quick sharpen, turn it around, and then slice in and watch. There we have nicely, finely chopped shallot all the way down. Each time. Sharpen the knife, back round, keep it nice and flat, in. Don't worry about the speed. All the way down, round, come in towards, lift up the knife, position nice and flat again, and then chop. And the speed will come once you've mastered the technique, but you've got to get the technique right first. Secure the vegetable first. Nice and solid. The biggest mistake that amateurs make, they try to chop too fast first. Get your techniques absolutely nailed. Once your technique is nailed, the knife is razor sharp, you're confident with the slicing. Be precise. The more precise you are, the quicker and the better you chop. Make sure you turn the vegetable around to suit you. So many times it's awkward. The coming around the side of the board. Get the position at 6 o'clock with the vegetable to suit you, not the board. And then hold it together and chop. These are German-made knives that I have been working with for many years. It gives me the level of security because the weight is in the handle. And that added weighted handle gives you so much more direction and you've got so much more control. Sometimes when the handle's so much lighter, it's harder to gauge the knife and the speed. So for me, the security is in the base and the grip of the handle that makes me feel so much more in control. And then the tip, putting the tip through the shallot there like that helps a dual dimension to the knife. I can go through, down, and then just literally chop. I use the tip to open up the shallot to get in there, slice down, and then I come back. But for me, chopping is all about the length of the blade. So if I'm chopping lots of shallots, lots of garnish, lots of carrots, lots of vegetables, I need a big chopping knife. I've got the weight at the end of the handle. I slice through so much easier. And the weight and the prolificness of the knife helps to slice it even finer. So from there, hold. I'm using the back end of the knife this time. I've used the tip to do the slicing, but the chopping, I'm actually using the base of the knife. And it's just like cutting through butter because it's the thicker part of the blade and it's so much easier to slice and chop from the base than it is from the tip. And look, that finely chopped shallot, all by using the base of the knife. Now here's how I learned to chop properly. Any vegetables that are sort of gone past the sell-by date, that don't look stunning, and you slice in quickly, then whether it's the cucumber, zucchini, a soft vegetable that help you go a little bit faster. So look, they don't look perfect, but they're great for chopping, and it's a great exercise. Rather than cut them into battens or roast them whole, top and tail them. That basically means take off the top and take off the tail. Push that aside. When you start chopping, keep your board clean. Start off the thin end and work your way up to the big end. Start off with your big end. It's much harder to control as it gets narrower, much easier to control as it gets larger. 3-finger rule, 1 in front, 2 behind, and just start chopping. And let the knife do the work. Remember, I've got that weighted handle, that tip. But there's the point there. That's what we're going to be using there, between there and there, to chop this. So start off. Don't go too thin to begin with. Up and down. Fingers rolling down the side. Keeping the board nice and clean. Don't worry about them moving everywhere. But look, I've got my fingers here and I'm pushing my fingers alongside. So I'm gripping the back of the zucchini with my thumb and my pinky and my fingers in front, and I'm pushing down. So I'm in control, so it's not gonna slip either way, so I've always got that safety net. But start again. Find the groove where it sits nice and flat. Roll it around so it's nice and secure and comfortable. And then, as it sits, pin it down. Don't worry about the thickness and don't worry about the speed. Start off nice and slow, and then build as you get in to your stride. Looking down, sliding all the way down, and then right to the very last slice. So the bigger the board, the more control you've got. So if you want to chop really fast, make sure you've got a nice medium to large size board and give yourself a little bit of space, especially for breaking down chickens, salmon. Give yourself a lot of space on there because that's your playground, that's your canvas. So make sure that you have a board that's big enough for you to feel secure with. Slicing a butternut squash looks awkward and difficult. When you knock it with your fist like that, it sounds almost like a drum, which identifies it's ripe and it's somewhat hollow. But if I was roasting this thing, I'd slice it in half into the oven, olive oil, garlic, rosemary, and then scrape it out. But in order to dice it, that's one of the most difficult vegetables to dice. So what do we do first? We top and tail it. We just take off the top there, turn it round, top and tail. Just take off a little bit of the base like that. That way it stands upright and it's so much safer. Turn it down in half. Look at the midway point slice through, let the knife do the work, and literally use the handle of the knife and slice through. So we've got 2 halves. Now, from there, take a smaller knife and literally start peeling down. Because the secret here is that we don't want to waste. So it's almost like an orange or a grapefruit. We're coming round and we're using a flexible blade to come underneath, around. Now, it's a very tough, difficult skin, so there's no easy way around it, but it's a great way of not wasting much of your butternut squash. And these things come in all different shapes and sizes, so you want to use that flexible blade. My fingers are keeping the butternut squash nice and firmly down. I've got the base sliced, so there's nothing sliding. And then from there, let the knife do the work. So you bend the knife around to the shape of the butternut squash. Around. And then turn it upside down and go round again. This is a boning knife. It's great for preparing poultry. It's great for fish. And it's got that flexible blade, so when you're coming in and out of those joints, the blade is bending to the position that you want it to. So start from the top, and you bend the knife around the shape of the butternut squash. That way we're taking off tiny little slithers, and we're not wasting much. So I've maintained the shape of the butternut squash and haven't wasted too much. If we were to use a big chopping knife, it'll come down in big squares. You've got no flexibility with the blade, and so we're wasting way too much, and the yield from your butternut squash will be far less. So start off with a big chopping knife, top and tail, and then use this beautiful paring knife to come round. Once you've peeled off that skin from your butternut squash, turn it back upright. Get comfortable with the position of it. Like I said, 6 o'clock, keep everything uniformed. Take your big knife. Now, slice down, through. Start from the top, let the knife do the work, and through. Take off the next side, because we're coming into the hole now in the center. So, if I want an inch dice or half an inch dice, I start from the top, half an inch in. That way, you've got consistency with every slice that you make. Now, the slices I've taken off, layer them back on exactly the same way as they came off. And look, so what happens? My 3 slices go back together, 1, 2, 3, slide them back down, and then I don't want to waste much, but I want a nice fine dice. Knife on top of the butternut squash, slice down like big matchsticks, all the way through. And this is where the base of the knife literally takes over. Now, from that, turn that around, set it back, take small piles at a time, line them up again, keep them in uniform. It's going to create this really nice fine dice. And look. Now, this is the same method that you use for zucchini, same method you use for eggplant. And look, every step of the way, got these beautiful fine dice. Butternut squash. Take another pile. The more confident you get, the bigger the pile. Bunch them up together again, and then literally let the knife do the work. Use the base of the knife to slice through, line up on the hold of the knife, and look. Cutting butternut squash this tiny, it cooks so easily. It's a great way of starting a risotto. If I was making a butternut squash risotto, I'd be sweating off the butternut squash in with my garlic and shallots. So as it starts to sort of puree as the rice cooks. That's how to dice a butternut squash. Same for carrots, same for potatoes, exactly the same method. Scrambled eggs. Who doesn't love scrambled eggs? There's an art to a perfect scrambled egg. It's one of the first things I mastered in Paris, but the secret behind any great scrambled egg is stopping it from overcooking. And I'm going to show you the basic, but how do you elevate it to $1 million? Watch. Now, eggs. The most important thing before you start making scrambled eggs is to make sure you got everything ready. Because when you start scrambled eggs, it's very hard to slow it down. It's live, and a perfect scrambled egg takes about 3.5 to 4 minutes max. So, eggs, butter from the fridge. Here, I've got sea urchin. That's gonna elevate that creaminess. And then, of course, white truffle. Grated white truffle in scrambled eggs makes that feel so luxurious, it's extraordinary. How do we stop the scrambled eggs from overcooking? A little touch of creme fraiche, and then we'll season it with a little touch of fresh chives at the very end. Now, first things first, non-stick pan. That way we get a much greater yield on making these scrambled eggs, and it's got that nice comfort underneath that nothing's burning. I never make scrambled eggs in stainless steel pans. It's the worst thing you can do. Making a non-stick pan lifts and folds those eggs so they get creamier and creamier every time. Now, eggs on the side of the pan, lightly tap, open, and crack. Now, I normally make scrambled eggs 3 or 4 times a week, so it's something I taught the kids to make from literally 2.5, 3 years of age. It is something unique to say that you can perfect a scrambled egg. Eggs in. Do not beat them and do not season them. If we were to season them now, it turns the eggs runny. And before you start cooking them, they go grey. Salt destroys the eggs, so you have to cook them first before you start seasoning. Eggs in, butter. This then starts to make the eggs nice and creamy. From there, gas on. Get the gas up nice and high. Put the pan on. And this is your get out of jail spatula, because what happens as you start turning and whisking these eggs is removing all the eggs and the butter from underneath. And it makes the portion so much bigger in a way that how many times you made a scrambled egg, then you see 1/3 of it caked underneath that pan where it's just sticking to the stainless steel. So the secret to make sure these eggs are cooked evenly is to get that scraper and turn it every time from the top of the pan to the bottom of the pan. That way, the eggs cook evenly. Continue scraping down the side. You'll see why in a minute, because we're not wasting anything. And I want the vibrancy. The butter's starting to melt. The butter stops the eggs from overcooking, but I want that nice, rich, fluffy texture. Still no seasoning in there. Now, whilst I'm waiting for that, I'm gonna get my chives out, ready, and chop them very, very finely. Take the chives, get rid of the ends. Now, chopped nice and finely. I want that nice little sort of onion flavor running through those eggs. Just a touch. You haven't got any chives, then spring onions are great, but just a pinch of chives at the end. You start the eggs, chop the chives, and here's the secret behind a great scrambled egg. Once you've got the heat in the pan, take it off. Don't cook it too quickly. Cooking scrambled eggs too quickly makes it go runny. I want that butter to melt nicely. I want that nice richness. And look, back onto the heat. So you go on and off. On for 90 seconds, off for 20 seconds. Back on for 90 seconds, back off again. Gas back up. Now, you can see how clean that pan is, look. So important, that spatula. A lot of people make scrambled eggs with wooden spoons. Wooden spoons don't clean the pan as much as the spatula does. So the interesting part here is to make sure, look, as the eggs start to thicken, all I'm doing is cleaning the bottom and scraping down my non-stick pan, really important. Now, it's coming together. These are the final stages of your scrambled egg. Now, before I salt them, I'm gonna put in one of my sea urchin. Mix that in, almost chop it up with your spatula. That's the texture I want, a rich, creamy texture. Now from there, a teaspoon of creme fraiche. In with my chives, season all at the same time, salt and pepper, and then fold in that sea urchin. Fold in that creme fraiche, fold in the seasoning, and before you serve it, you have got to taste those eggs. Really important. Now, wow, delicious. So, at the bottom, I want a little surprise. Sea urchin into the bottom. scrambled egg sits on top of that sea urchin. And look at it. It's rich, it's creamy, it's delicate, and it's so humble. Now, the heat of that scrambled egg starts to cook that sea urchin on the bottom, and then from there, take one little sea urchin and place that on top. And then finally, for that added part of decadence, take your white truffle that's been stored in the rice and just lightly grate this truffle. Get close to it as not to waste any truffle, because that is scrambled egg with sea urchin and white truffle to die for. Beautiful. Chicken, come on, one of the most popular proteins anywhere in the world. So, look at it, it's fresh. You've got to use fresh chicken over frozen. Frozen chicken retains so much water, it's very impossible to get any color on it. So, fresh over frozen any day. But use your brain, look at the condition of the bird visually before you buy it. You know, it's plump, it looks great. The condition of it, it's shiny. The flesh is in full view. More importantly, hardly any fat on there. So you can tell it's a great free-range chicken that's been sort of reared and brought up healthily. Really important. And the most important thing about buying a chicken is the weight of it. You want to feel that weight in terms of the sort of freshness of it. Now, hardly any fat anywhere. One of the most difficult birds to get right, but one of the birds that can deliver an incredible flavor. These drums and the thighs, that dark meat, beautiful. I always think it's a waste just to fry it every time. The flavor, you know, inside that drum and the thigh is way much more substantial than the breast. The breasts are a completely different beast because there's hardly any fat there. The chicken breasts need a little bit of help as well because it's quite a dense, dull flavor. But get it right and it's absolutely beautiful. Underneath this thing, positioned under the thighs, are these little oysters. That's the chef's dream because that's that one go-to area that we sort of, we keep it as a hidden secret from our guests because it's that one little bit of chicken that you always want to taste. And then, of course, what we've got left once the drums, the thighs, the wings, and the breast go, that incredible carcass. You know, don't be scared to cook an amazing stock. A brown chicken stock is a chef's dream because it's the base behind every sauce. And then these beautiful wings. You know, there's so much more to gain than just a fried chicken wing. A chicken lollipop, you know, great for canapes, great for stocks, but more importantly, the meat on these wings, the kind of dishes that we do in the restaurants now, we pair the wings with, you know, shellfish, langoustine, lobster. You know, it's not that bit that you want to see in this sort of hot sauce. The chicken wing is a chef's best friend. Breaking down a chicken is so important to understand and learn because the yield is incredible. There's 8 to 10 portions from this one chicken, and it's much cheaper buying them whole. Plus, you've got so many advantages between the thighs, the drums, the wings, the breast, and of course the carcass. So, start off with it positioned at 6 o'clock. Here's the drums. Get comfortable with the chicken. Feel it first. Understand the weight and what you're working with before you start slicing into it. So much better to get closer to your ingredient before you start slicing. Now, I'm going to take off the drums and the thighs first and then go to the wings. Lift up, and immediately that's your mark there. So you hold the skin and you slice through. So this is a chopping knife. It's great for slicing through bones, but higher up, and you'll end up with the breast with no skin on there. Then you very carefully put your thumb and push up and pop out that joint. Now you take the tip of the knife, you come underneath and you slice through, and then you twist the knife down towards the carcass and you slice through. You've got the drum and you've got the thigh. Now, from there, turn it over. Fill the joint And you'll feel that knuckle in there, and that's the indication on where to hit the knife. Pull your hand back and slice through. Feel it? And it should slice through like butter. And that takes off your drum. You've got one drum and one thigh. Now, same on the other side. This time, turn the chicken around, put the base towards you again. There's the nick. Use your thumb to push down, fingers underneath, and you pop out that knuckle. And then from there, use the tip, come round, and slice off your second thigh and drum. Turn it over, feel the joint, so you're not hacking through a bone, and literally slice through. And off comes your second drum and your second thigh. Now, there's 4 portions there. 1, 2, 3, 4. The thighs are huge. The drums are delicious. Center the chicken back up. Place the back of the breast towards you. Lift out the wings, each side. Pull out the wings. Thumb underneath. We're going to come into the joint here, and you slice through. And then you push up, and that's what takes off the wing. Slice through. Now, there's your wing. Turn the chicken around. Feel the joint with your thumb. Pull your thumb back. Slice through. Pop. And that's what takes off your second wing. So, 2 wings, 2 drums, 2 thighs. Turn the chicken around, and now for the Rolls-Royce cut, the Supreme. First of all, the breasts are intact with the skin. Feel the breastbone there. Pull back the skin. You can feel the breastbone, and take the knife, slice through, feel that breastbone. Use the tip of the knife, bring the knife up, use the tip, and I'm sat on top of the wishbone now. So take your hand and slice through. From there, use your thumb again. Separate the chicken from the carcass, and look, let the knife do the work. Using the tip closest to the carcass, remove every ounce of chicken from the carcass. This is the Rolls-Royce cut because it's the most expensive cut. But get this right, and you've got this wonderful Supreme that is packed with flavor. Look at that. That's beautiful. Now, inside there you've got the chicken tender, we call the fillet. Again, beautiful, and there's beautiful big breast with the skin intact. Now from there, turn your chicken back round. This time, we go into the top of the breastbone, use the tip of the knife to come up the top, thumb runs down the side, and we just literally let the knife do the work, holding on to every ounce of meat on that carcass, remembering to let the knife do the work. So this is a chopping knife. I've got the advantage of the tip to come in on the top of the breastbone. Also, I've got the weight of the handle to come through the drum and the thigh to separate. That is the best knife. And look, there's our second big breast, which is big enough for 2. And look at the yield now. Now, that may look disgusting, but trust me, as a stock, it's incredible. Making a chicken soup, the amount of chicken flavor inside that is incredible. Turn over, and inside here are what we call the oysters. Now, oysters, lightly fried, lightly sauteed, there's still so much more to gain from just the carcass. Don't underestimate the power of the carcass. As a stock, incredible. As a soup, mind-blowing. But, again, another big reason why to buy birds whole and to break it down and to use this as the stock and the essence of a great soup. 2, 4, 6, 8, plus the wings, portions of delicious chicken from one amazing bird. That's why you need to know how to break down a chicken, and the yield goes so much further. Every time you touch poultry, clean those hands. Really important. Now, cooking chicken. Cooking a Suprema chicken, there's an art to it. First of all, take it out of the fridge, let it relax for 3 minutes before you start cooking it. This is one of the most simple dishes, but one of the most exciting because it's done with roasted vegetables that sort of cook themselves. First off, get the chicken out of the fridge, let it get up to room temperature, and season it. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that people make cooking chicken, it goes dry because they're so unforgiving. There's no fat across this breast. It's not like the drum or the thigh. You know, that thing can be cooked for hours without being overcooked. But this is so difficult to get right because of this little bit here. This is a chicken tender. That lays underneath the breast. But in a way, it's a sort of double whammy because you've got lots of flavor there. Now, lightly season it and let it sit there for a couple of minutes just to get up to speed with room temperature. Wash your hands every time you work with chicken. Clearly important to wash your hands. Now, let it sit there. We're roasting this chicken with these beautiful vegetables. At the top of this masterclass, I showed you my favorite ingredients, and you know, these are the kind of things that you can find anywhere. Beautiful baby turnips, beautiful carrots, beetroots, golden beetroots. You know, if you're up against it time-wise, this is the perfect way to roast these vegetables. Even with fingerling potatoes in there, it's a meal on its own. Now, they've been washed, okay, so they don't need to peel them. They're baby, they're young, and you can actually eat them raw. They're that delicious. So here we have a bed of rosemary, thyme, parsley, and a little bit of rock salt. So basically, the salt at the bottom of the tray helps season the vegetables, but what we do is lay the vegetables on top of all those herbs. So as they roast in the oven, the salt extracts the water and the moisture from these vegetables and starts to caramelize. They take about 35 to 40 minutes. When they come out, the smell of those young vegetables is incredible. So, tray, herbs on the bottom, vegetables, and then cover with tin foil. Now, whenever you use tin foil, shiny side up, dull side in. The dull side insulates the heat so much better. Shiny side is always on the top. That's the bit that needs to be underneath. Seal it nice and tight. So as these vegetables are roasting, we've got that nice steaming going on at the same time. The salt is picking up any moisture, but I want that essence of the turnips and the beetroot to bleed into the carrots. I want the juice from the carrots bleeding into the turnips. Turn the gas on, and then literally stick your tray on top of the gas. Now, if I was to put that straight into the oven, it takes an extra 5 to 10 minutes to get up to speed, but I want to slightly smoke those herbs underneath, get it up to speed so it goes in the oven hot, so it all starts taking place a lot quicker. This will lift up, and that fusion from those herbs, the rosemary, the thyme, the parsley, will start to bleed into those vegetables. 30 seconds on top of the gas. You can hear that crackling away. That is so beneficial to those vegetables, trust me. And it's a great way of cooking for the family because 3 or 4 portions in there at a time, potatoes in there as well. This whole thing, when that tin foil comes off, it's just incredible. Now, you hear that snack, crackle and pop, into the oven. Now, pan on for the chicken. Everybody's worried about cooking a chicken breast because it's one of the most difficult to get right. Never cook chicken stone cold. It goes dry before it's cooked in the center. The majority of the worry is that it's still pink in the middle, but if you cook this right, trust me, it absolutely stays nice and moist. And then, once we've cooked the chicken, you let it rest, and we're gonna make the most amazing pan sauce from that chicken. Now, oil in, grapeseed oil. 9 times out of 10, we'll be using olive oil when cooking fish. When cooking chicken or meat, it's always grapeseed oil. It has a much higher burn content, so it gives a little bit more of a get out of jail card. Oil in, turn the pan down. Now we want to get that nice color on that chicken. With the chicken, we're gonna get some garlic, whole cloves of garlic. Don't worry about chopping it, slicing it, just whole cloves. And then, of course, some thyme. Why the thyme? Thyme goes beautifully with chicken. Also, I'm starting to think about that sauce. Remember I said? Smash the garlic, and that starts to release that wonderful flavor. Put all that in there. Be generous with the thyme. Every time I start cooking chicken, I start thinking, what's happening next? What's the next stage? Where are we going with this? So, lift up the chicken and place into the pan. Don't put it in unless you hear that noise. Otherwise, your sauteed chicken becomes boiled chicken. In and lay away from you. Herbs in. Quick wash of the hands. And then get some color on that skin. Really important. Once we've got the color on the skin, we'll add the butter, and then the chicken goes into the oven. We've got the temperature up, turn the gas down. Now, don't move that. Start smelling that wonderful fried thyme, the garlic. But the garlic and the thyme are going to be so pivotal to the sauce because we're going to deglaze the pan, and that flavor from this chicken caramelizing now is going to be the base to our sauce. Now, tilt the chicken. Shift it to the end of the pan, lift up the pan. What happens, you start cooking the back of the chicken breast so we get a really nice sear all around. Count to 10, place it round, do it for the other side. And all we're doing now is searing each side of the chicken. From there, place the pan back down and literally flip it over. Beautiful. Now, from there, in goes my butter. Butter goes in. And this is when we start basting our chicken. Beautiful. The smell is incredible. So what does the butter do? The butter gives more flavor to that chicken. Also, it starts caramelizing that nice nut brown flavor. Now, look at that butter now. It's gone beurre noisette. A nut brown flavor. Beautiful. From there, turn the chicken breast over again, roll it towards you, and again, baste the other side this time. And then, literally, from there, into the oven, skin side down, 8 to 10 minutes. Right, chicken out. Beautiful. Vegetables, a couple of more minutes. But look at that breast. It's nice and plump. And take that out, we'd leave that to rest. Oh man, that's beautiful. Look at it. Absolutely beautiful. Now, drain off the excess fat. Really important, but listen up. Because in there now is a magical moment. Because there holds our flavor. That's the base of the sauce. That's the bit of magic we can't let go of. Bring the pan back up to temperature, slice a few shallots, and this is how we do a simple pan sauce. Even if it's a filet, a New York strip, or even a simple chicken breast, it's all done the same way. Because the worst thing we could do now to that pan is put it in the wash. The flavor in there is stuck to the bottom of that pan, so we're going to deglaze it. Start off with shallots. And shallots is the quickest way to a sauce because it starts to add that sweetness. Fresh butter, butter in. Now, take your garlic that was roasted earlier, get that back in there. And the thyme, back in. Nothing wrong with this. Back in. And then literally caramelize these shallots. Look what's happening to the bottom of the pan. We're cleaning that pan, cleaning all that flavor from underneath. You can't buy that kind of content. You can't buy that flavor because you've just cooked that chicken in this pan. So all the goodness is in here. Once we've got those shallots on the verge of being nice and crispy, throw in a little touch of pancetta, smoked bacon, elevate it. I'm going to show you the basic pan jus. So shallots, garlic. What's happening now to that garlic? It's starting to puree. It's almost confit, so it's so sweet and so beautiful. Those shallots really help to give that nice sweetness to the chicken jus. And then from there, deglaze the pan with a little bit of brandy. Now turn the gas down. Be careful. Thumb over the end, deglaze. Off. Beautiful. Now, the smell in there now. Deglazing the pan with brandy gives it that sort of, that structure to the sauce, because you've got that nice sweetness from the brandy, but you've burnt off the alcohol, so you've got that bit of magic in there, and it just gives that wonderful, incredible flavour. Again, deglaze. Beautiful. So beautiful. And the alcohol burns off so quickly. Now look at that there. Those shallots caramelized beautifully, but look at my pan. My pan's clean. Where's that gone? It's gone into the sauce. And now, finish with demi-glace. This demi-glace is a reduced veal stock. If you haven't got demi-glace, just a reduced chicken stock. Any form of stock, even a beef stock would work. Turn the gas down, and then in. Look at that. That is beautiful. Man. Beautiful. And now correct the seasoning. Tilt the pan. Wow, that's delicious. A touch of salt. And then from there, we're not done yet. We're gonna get a little bit of structure to the sauce. Now, quick taste. So I want that balance between a sort of sweet, a slight tartness to the sauce, but that depth of flavor. I want to close my eyes and identify that is a chicken jus. The seasoning helps bring it together, but we're not done yet. In through a sieve. Pour that in there. And from there, look, take the back of your spoon and push the onions, the roasted garlic through there. And all of a sudden you see this sort of sauce getting nice and thick. So don't worry if the stock is a little bit too thin. By the time those shallots and garlic go through, look what's happening to that sieve underneath. All that sweet, pureed garlic is running through. Now, take the end of your spoon and just scrape that off. And that is the most natural, the most delicious thickening agent you'll ever find. Beautiful. I close my eyes and it tastes like a chicken essence. It's that good. Vegetables out. And look. Inside here is that wonderful sort of box of roasted vegetables. Man, watch what happens. Oh, this smell, incredible. You can smell the sweetness from the beetroot, the sweetness from the carrots, and that earthiness from those turnips to die for. So when we come to plate this, it's like a beautiful mosaic, an amazing garden that comes to life. Look at the turnips. I mean, beautiful. It's a great way of cooking vegetables. Also, they remain as vegetables in a way that I mean that they're not trying to be any different. They're just beautiful roasted beets, roasted turnips, roasted carrots. But look at them. Now, it's like putting the garden on a plate. Slice the turnips. Wow. Place them on to your plate. They're baby roasted vegetables. They don't need peeling. The flavor is extraordinary. You peel these, you're peeling away the flavor. Look at the colors. Absolutely beautiful. Top and tail them if they get a little bit hairy, but just look inside there. Absolutely beautiful. Baby beets, baby carrots, and stunning turnips. You know, I fell in love with turnips when I was living in France because they were the cheapest vegetable on the market and one of the most flavoursome. Beautiful, really beautiful. Don't worry about the tops of the carrots. They're baby carrots. People eat these raw. And then, man, look, slice the carrots open so we can see that beautiful sheen in there. Amazing. And then, finally, the chicken. It's really important that the chicken's been resting, and I'll explain why. Chicken bursts open. When you cook meat and it's piping hot, the worst thing you can do is slice into it because all the juice will end up on the board. I promise you, my juice is inside this breast. Take off that beautiful little chicken tender. Sit that on. The chicken should literally rest for 3 or 4 minutes. You don't want to slice it piping hot. All the goodness will run. Watch as I slice this. I'll show you the goodness. Watch. I slice through the chicken breast. Not too thin. But as I open that up, I'm going to show you. Look, it's not pink. It's moist, and it is packed full of flavor. Slice it. Place it back together. Don't put a slice on at a time. Lift it on with your knife and literally let it slide off that knife. Beautiful. And then the sauce. The sauce that money can't buy. Glaze the vegetables and your chicken. Keep that skin nice and crispy. How would I, Gordon Ramsay, lift that to another level? It may sound impossible, but this, lightly, and I mean lightly, because they're fucking expensive. You grate fresh Perrigo truffle over that chicken. And honestly, you've taken that humble, incredible chicken supreme and elevated it to the Premier League of proteins. That is how to serve chicken. Fish, it's so much more difficult cooking fish than it is meat because fish doesn't have a medium rare, well done. There's only one temperature, and that's perfection. With a ribeye, a fillet, we can go from rare to medium rare to, unfortunately, sometimes well done. But with fish, you have to be on point. You've got to get close to it. It's Alaskan king salmon. Look at it. I mean, literally hours old. Don't be intimidated by seeing a fish covered in slime. It just confirms the freshness. More importantly, touch it. A nice, bouncy, firm flesh confirms the freshness of it. The gills, they need to be bright red inside. So, have the confidence to get in there and check those gills. That signifies the freshness of it. The eyes, when you look at the eyes in the salmon, they're not sunken in. They're plump, they're bright, and they look like they're still alive. And then this beauty here. When you see the salmon, you see this hook underneath the lip. It's where the salmon's burrowing in and out of the rocks and trying to feed. And so it just confirms that it's a wild, fresh salmon. There's nothing wrong with farmed, providing it's been farmed in an open pen. But the flavor difference from a wild to a farmed is night and day. So I'd rather use less wild salmon, identify the flavor, than use farm salmon. It shouldn't be on menus 12 months a year. It should be seasonal. And more importantly, you can close your eyes and just identify in flavor. Once you cut through this beautiful wild salmon, you see that dark orange texture, hardly any fat. But on the belly of a wild salmon, that fat inside there is a healthy fat because this fish has been swimming non-stop for years. And then when it comes home to spawn, you can see how it forms that shape of that pointed nose and is on that mission to deliver the eggs. This beauty here, a sea bass. When I first started cooking, I wasn't allowed to fillet these because they were so expensive, we could never afford to screw up. It's got a very difficult sort of rib cage inside that is very springy and awkward to take those fillets off. So I had to practice with mackerel. Mackerel were 2 to a penny and we could afford to mess them up. And then once I mastered the mackerel, we can get onto the sea bass. Trout, again, something stunning with the rainbow trout. Look in the condition of it, just touching it, feeling how firm it is. Eyes plentiful, gills bright red, and just the weight of the fish as well. And then this has to be the Rolls Royce of any fish, a beautiful wild turbot. And that's why it's called a flat fish, because it literally is flat. And when it sits on the bed, you can't see it because the color of that beautiful skin is very, very similar to the sand. It floats and moves like this, and then when it sees its prey, it dives under the sand, and all you see are these little eyes twitching, and then it comes out and pounces. But look at the size of that mouth. When that mouth opens, boy, it's 3 times the size. When it closes, you can hardly see it. Now, the turbot. This is a chef's dream. One of the most expensive fish anywhere in the world, but look at it. Again, eyes nice and plump, not sunken in, and then you open up in here, you can see that bright red position of the gills. Again, confirms its freshness, but more importantly, just the firmness of this fish. Now, there's 4 sides to this flatfish. First one, fillet number 1 there, fillet number 2 here, and then you turn it over, fillet number 3, fillet number 4, and then just in here, underneath that jaw, is what we call the turbot oyster. When you get inside there, it's like this beautiful little glistening pearl, and it's a race in any top flight kitchen to what chef gets that for dinner, because it's the one piece that no customer ever gets to eat, and it's just incredible. Again, in Japan, they eat them raw. It is that fresh. But the big news about the turbot is the fact that not only is it quite robust and quite meaty in terms of flavor, this and their head produces the most gelatinous fish stock. So it's almost a setting agent. When you're making a consommé or a jelly, the only one bone you want to go to is the turbot bone, because it packs the most amazing flavor. And it's a fish that, when you sear it, it sort of helps improve the flavor, but so robust, so meaty, it's a chef's dream. Very, very rare. One of the most expensive jewels in the sea, but one of the most flavorsome. Shellfish, they don't give you time, they don't give you seconds. It needs to be nailed to absolute perfection. Now, scallops, honestly, one of my personal favorites. Also something that took me years to master. Now, look at these things. Beautiful. I mean, they're like the sort of jewels, the pearls, the sapphires of the sea. The freshness is dictated to by the sheen. So when you look at the scallop, you can identify its freshness because of the sparkling, glistening side to it. If they're dull and they look like they're broken and they look ripped, they're not fresh. Never, ever leave scallops in water. The minute you leave scallops in water, they're like sponges, they absorb. So we go to roast them or saute them, you'll never get any color of them. The freshness is in the plumpness, the nice, bright, white, firm flesh, and just the smell. Close your eyes, it's just smell of the ocean. Like every ingredient, it has a top and has a bottom. This is the top. Underneath is the bottom. And you can see how awkward that sits in my hand. Lay them, literally, I call it fat side up. This side here is the muscle connects it to the shell. So keep it plump. And then what happens if you set them in the fridge like this? They sort of almost bed into each other. And so what happens are they set in the fridge, you can see all the right way up, they retain their shape. Now, the most important thing is if they retain their shape in the fridge before you cook them, when you come to cook them, aesthetically on the plate already, the dish is 99% of the way there. If they're awkwardly positioned and they're upside down, different positions, they'll set like that. And so getting them to look beautiful on the plate, you've lost your opportunity. So pull back. Understand that that tiny side, the small bit at the bottom is the bottom side, and the big side, we call the fat side up, sits upright. And then this muscle goes to the next one, and they sort of jam up together. Now, there's a right and a wrong way for setting a scallop in a fridge. I know it sounds so meticulous, but if you get that right, honestly, cooking them is a dream, because they're literally 90 seconds away from perfection. I'm a massive supporter of hand-dive scallops. Never been a big fan of dredge scallops. Dredging scallops, you tend to taste that grit and that sand embedded inside. Cockles, clams, and mussels have to be key essentials to any great kitchen. You start off with these little baby cockles here. Again, just smelling them. The most important thing is ensuring that they are tight as anything. Like trying to get into the Pentagon, you cannot get in there. Never ever cook with shellfish that's been opened or they start to sort of decompose. The minute they're prized open, they're no longer fresh. They are still vibrant, they are still moving. The big manila clams, again, these things move throughout the sand and they open and close and they pulsate to get to the territories where they feed. The most important thing is running them under cold water prior to cooking them. That gets rid of any sand that maybe is inside. And then as you cook them, the minute they start to open, you take them out of the pan because that is where the magic is. But the juice and the flavor of the stock that comes from these minnow clams is extraordinary. Thick-lipped green mussels, again, just feeling the weight of these mussels is crucial. Inside that tiny, thin shell is incredible. So sweet, so dainty, and normally they have what they call little beards on them. Pull the beard off, scrape off the barnacles, run them under cold water prior to cooking. But again, if you get the pan hot enough, they literally take 30 seconds to steam, and then the magic is the juice. That mussel jus that comes out there is 90% of the base of any great fish sauce in any top kitchen anywhere in the world. But again, never cook with mussels that have been opened. Never cook with mussels that are smashed or cracked, and make sure you weigh them in your hands. If they feel solid, compact, then that identifies that they're fresh, they're packed with goodness, and it will deliver with flavor. The king of shellfish has to be this baby here. Now, doesn't get any better than these. These are native lobsters. I'm a massive fan of Scottish lobster. Going back to my days in Paris, we used to literally buy Scottish lobsters into Paris, and the French were so adamant the fact that they were almost pissed off that they were Scottish lobsters, they were removing the sign on the side of the box to identify they were Scottish. They hated the fact that the Scottish lobster was so much better than the French. It was extraordinary. Again, more importantly, it's in the weight, because it's live. You want that weight, the fact that, it's still moving. Sometimes when you buy lobster, you pick them up and they're light. All the goodness has gone out of them. Never buy a dead lobster. Never cook a dead lobster. And never cook a frozen lobster. It tastes of nothing but water. The dream way to purchase the lobster is from its aerated tank. Again, great seafood markets, great fishmongers have always got lobsters on. They can hold in the fridge. We call it the lazy lobster. Wrap them in damp newspaper and they stay live in the fridge for up to 3 to 4 days. If not, an aerated tank is absolutely perfection. But the first thing you should always do when you pick up a lobster is feel the weight of it. When it's compact and solid, then you know you've got a protein to die for. But look in here. When you roll the lobster over onto its back, you can tell this is a male because the tails are narrow. The female lobsters have got much wider tails, but you hold it upside down, just feel the weight of that tail. It's solid, it's moving, it's still vibrant. And then, of course, the yield from a lobster. 2 big claws, one to crush, and this one super sharp as a razor. So they slice through that one, and this one is to crush. But then these legs, packed with meat as well. Then, of course, this beautiful tail, packed with goodness. But do not underestimate the goodness inside that shell. The lining of a lobster head has this incredible pigment. It's a dark red pigment that we scrape the inside of the shell, and it helps to color the sauce. And it's an incredible sort of coloring that is so natural that if you're making a mousse, you can flavor that mousse with the actual pigment from inside that shell. Also, the brains inside the shell. We use the brains inside that shell to clarify consommes. It's so gelatinous. It's almost like using egg whites. Pretty incredible. But then the flavor of roasting these shells and making this incredible lobster jus is amazing. It took me about 4 years before I could afford lobsters on my menu. We had to use sort of cheaper versions of, prawns, other shellfish, but we couldn't afford lobsters for about 4 years. Then when we got them, I made sure from head to tail, to the body, to the carcass, to the legs, even to the knuckles, that everything on that lobster was used across those dishes. When I first started cooking with lobsters, we had to have huge supplements on the menu. And I was always worried the fact that once we bought these things that no one was going to buy them, they're so expensive. I see 3 dishes here. I see this incredible entree with this beautiful butter poached lobster here. I see these incredible knuckles and claws into a lobster ravioli. And then these here, the meat inside those legs, there's 8 of them. 8 legs plus 2 claws, 2 knuckles. It's incredible. That is an incredible yield. But then the final dish is the shell, the tails, and all the empty claws. You can turn that into the most amazing bisque. So, main course, lobster tail, appetizer, ravioli, tortellini, spaghetti and lobster, and then this beautiful shell that can be turned into the most gorgeous, the most amazing lobster bisque. It may start off as an expensive ingredient, but it's a proper investment. And even if you're cooking at home, there are so many ways to go with this, but it is a restaurant dream ingredient.
There's a completely insecure side to cooking because you're judged on a daily basis. And so you need to know what you're doing and you need to perfect. But the more I learned about food, the less insecure I became. So that turning point for me was actually believing that I could do this. I've got my own style. I can create something that nobody's doing, and I can give you food that, you haven't tasted before. I knew my dream one day was to come back to London, open up my own restaurant. I was 27 when I opened my first restaurant. In many people's eyes, that was too young, because what do you know at 27? But I was starving. I was ready. I was like a dog with 9 dicks. I was ready to go. I had all these mentors that were sort of pulling at me and wanting me, and that was a great position to be in, but I was keen to stand out on my own. So I got offered 25% of a restaurant that had previously gone bust in a shitty little area, the back of beyond Chelsea in Fulham. So we couldn't think of a name. And then all of a sudden, late one night, we're trying to think of fruits and vegetables. We came up with a name called Aubergine. We opened up with a bang. It was this tiny neighborhood bistro. There was 4 of us in the kitchen and 4 waiters in the front of the house. And I thought I had my own business. I didn't have my own business at all. I just got given 25% of a restaurant that had a lot of debts. And then within weeks, this place became the talk of the town. And it was just, a neighborhood bistro cooking great food. But I was on a mission. I was raw. I was cooking food like no one had seen in London for a long time. It was incredible finesse, deep flavor, but a light interpretation. So it wasn't thick, rich French cuisine. We were so fucking poor in those days. When the truffle man came round to our restaurant, I was asking him for broken bits of truffle. We couldn't afford whole white, black truffles. These things were £2,500, £3,000 a kilo. So I was asking him for truffle shavings. He looked at me like, I was some pauper, like I was some skivvy. We had oxtail, we had cod, we had lentils, we had no extravagant ingredients, but it was an extraordinary beginning. I remember every dish, every plate, and every critic that reviewed us. Every time we got reviewed, I used to go straight down to the train station on a Friday night, Victoria, and wait for the papers coming in for the weekend, sit there to 2, 3 o'clock in the fucking morning, waiting to see that review in the Independent, the Times, the Mail, and understand what these critics were saying. And we had to wait a year until the Michelin Guide came out. We opened up in September. The guide didn't come out to the following January. And then bang, the 17th of January, 1995, we got our first star, which was just incredible because it was that confirmation that we were good. But we were starting to rattle a few cages and we were starting to piss off a few big chefs because I was the one that had come back from France with something new and a little bit different. So the hallmark was there, the foundation was there from what I'd been taught by all these amazing chefs, but I had my spin on it. One little tiny change was a cappuccino white blanc with white truffles. And this was this amazing haricot blanc bean soup, a stunning bean soup, but it was an aerated, light, fluffy, rich, delicious cappuccino style soup that was served with, you know, grated fresh truffles. And that was the beginning of the sort of signature dishes that started to lift that restaurant. It was incredibly successful. You know, it was fully booked for 6 months in advance, from Salman Rushdie to Lady Di, you know, to Tony Blair. You know, you name it, we had this restaurant, you know, full on a weekly basis. You could not get in for love of money. I won 2 Michelin stars at Aubergine, and the dream, of course, was 3, but Aubergine was not the vehicle. If I was ever going to go and win 3 stars, there's only one fucking name that was going to be above the door, and it wasn't going to be Aubergine. It was going to be Gordon Ramsay. So I had to convince my wife that we're going to sell our apartment to raise money to put into a business that I wanted to own 100%. Tana turned around and thought, you know, you're fucking mad. You know, we just got on the property ladder. Why are we selling? I said, well, I need money. She said, yeah, but this is our house. This is our home. I said, I know, but I need a deposit. We haven't got that great a reputation that banks are going to throw money at us. I need to put money into this business. 1st September 1998 came. Tana and I were in rented accommodation. Our daughter had just been born literally 4 months prior to that. And yeah, I had the world on my shoulders. I was ramped up beyond belief. I decided to have a documentary called Boiling Point follow me across the 12 months of opening that restaurant. And it was a fucking shitstorm because the celebrity chef world on TV was just all starting to boom, and there was this fucking maniac that was on a mission, and I wasn't carrying any passengers, and I'd forgotten anything to do with a camera crew watching me cook, and it was intense. It was really intense because I was desperate to win that 3rd star. I was on that mission to sort of get this business successful. We left Aubergine in July, and that September, in the same year, you know, we announced that the restaurant Gordon Ramsay will be opening, you know, 3 months later. So the phone system went crazy, off the hook. Every goddamn critic came in to turn me upside down and give me a great fucking sideways. And so it was, again, you know, on the chopping block. I started to realize, you know, how much of an impact that restaurant was having, because it was becoming more and more prolific, and we were climbing every guide. They cooked 40 lunch, 40 dinner, 5 days a week, one team, one dynamic team, the best restaurant in the country, one of the best. You know, it has to be seamless every day, but there were so many things that go on behind the scenes to make it that magical. 57 staff with 38 seats, the ratio is insane, but it's a trinket box that runs to perfection. It goes from this neighborhood local restaurant to a renowned address within London, then it becomes a destinational restaurant across Great Britain, and then it becomes a worldwide phenomenon in a way that we're having customers coming from Australia, people flying in from New York, and it was just becoming so sought after, and you become focused even more, and the team get focused even more. I didn't know much about business then. You know, I couldn't understand a balance sheet, and I had no idea. But what I did do was break it down myself. And so I got taught a very simple lesson early on in business. You know, businesses are sort of divided into 25% quarters. So if you turn $60,000 a week, you break it into 4 parts. And the 4 parts are the following: 25%, you know, labor costs, 25% purchasing, 25%, you know, rent and rates, and then 25% bottom line. So your last week in each month is your profit. Your first week is your staff, your second week is your overheads, produce, and your third week is your rent, and your fourth week is your profit. And that's what keeps the business afloat. And to this day, I still use that analogy because it's a really great way of just simplifying the importance of making a business successful, because there are so many chefs that go bust. We have this generous, sort of overzealous confidence about pleasing people to the extent that you could put yourself out of business by becoming too generous. I remember when I got told the night that I'd won my third Michelin star in 6 fucking years, 3 Michelin star. The next call that came in was from Guy Savoy and said, you know, I still haven't won my third star. To think that you have been in my kitchen, you've won your third star. I've been cooking 15 years longer than you. I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased that what I gave you, you've taken to another level. And it was just that moment thinking, shit, I've done it. You know, I've got where I wanted to go. I've got to the very top. I don't know how important, you know, food can become on top of this. And when that inspector sits you down, 2 of them, and say, Gordon, in the forthcoming publication of the next guide of Great Britain for the Michelin, your restaurant's been promoted to 3 stars. Everything goes really quiet. Man, everything just goes, yeah, it's hard. You know, it's fucking amazing because everything you ever wanted is like, bang. And then you think of all the shit. You think of all the bollockings and all the discipline, all the mornings you've woken up and you're fucked and you can't get out of the bed, but you push for that one thing and it's just, yeah, it's amazing. When I won my third star, I think that was the bit that, you know, scared the crap out of me, because Tana sat me down and said, look, you know, you're 34 years of age, we've got Megan, and if you don't change, you're gonna kill yourself. Your dad passed at 53 as a heart attack, and, you know, you gotta slow down. So I started shitting myself, thinking, I've just built this incredible restaurant, I gotta let go. I need to open up. That's exactly what I did. From becoming one of the most selfish fuckers anywhere on the planet with knowledge and obsession and drive and perfection, I had to go in reverse. I had to share everything I had in me, on me, with me. I took chefs under my wing. Yeah, I sort of, I made them sort of mini-me's. So yeah, I created some monsters, which they've gone on and done some brilliant things in the industry. And they've become thoroughbreds in their own right. But there's a very strong side to me that demands so much, but then there's a strong side that gives so much. And those that are loyal, understanding, determined, focused, they get it and they get me. And that's what that teaching aspect started to implode. And I had to become the most unselfish individual and start giving everything I knew, had, touched, flavored, off. I had to stand back. I needed to stand back because it was such a machine that it would have killed me. You know, just turned 50. I remember being in Paris, going to work for Joe Robuchon, and 6 months into working in his kitchen, he announced that he's retiring at 50. And I thought, you selfish fucker, how can you do that? I've just got to your door. I'm busting my ass off in your restaurant and you just announced your retirement. So the thought of me stopping now at 50, shit, I don't know. I mean, what the fuck would I do? Now, Alaskan king salmon, look at it. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. It's the fish that every chef loves cooking, but to fillet them,
it's an operation. Now, this salmon's been gutted and scaled, really important. Never start to fillet a salmon with the scales on because the knives won't go through the scales, they're so tough. So get your fishmonger to gut it and scale it. It's so easy to do. So to fillet it, i.e. to butcher it, you've got to maximize on the yield. You've got to maximize on the portions, and you cannot afford one wrong slip. Every time I do this, even after 20 years and thousands of salmon, I still get that tingle, that level of excitement that I'm there to conquer and to maximize 18, 20, sometimes 25 portions of salmon and hold up that carcass with the head and the tail and make sure there's no flesh on that bone. First off, raise the sharp knife. Now, I'm using a Japanese knife, a weighted handle, multi-layered, compressed, brushed stainless steel, refined knife that's just like razor. But you need this fish to help you fillet it. Fillet it basically means taking off 2 fillets. It's a round fish. It's got to be quick because it's quite oily. As these fish sit out in the heat, it starts to release the oil, which can become so much more dangerous. So, filleting flat fish is so much easier. Round fish, you've got your work cut out. Tilt the tail and the head and push them together. That way, when I slice in, the weight of the fish pulls against my knife, and I've got that nice, clean cut all the way. There's the top. Check that there's no scales left. Even when we finish scaling the fish, brush the skin back to its normal way. Really important because it helps the knife strokes so much cleaner. Look, when the skin is rough like that, the cut will be rough. Bring the skin back and then get your knife prepped. But look where we're going first. Up with the fin and slice towards the head, straight through, without going through that bone. Then feel the tip of the knife across the center of the carcass and come out. Every time we go into that salmon, we clean the knife. And then, with your hand, pull back the skin, clean your knife. Clean knife makes a clean cut. Go through that salmon, tilt the knife, pressure with your index finger on, and then run all the way along. Come down that back. Come down that back. Do not lift out. All the way to the end. Very carefully, open up that first cut with your thumb, run down the side, and look where you're going. That's the midway point of the fillet. Don't break the salmon. Gently, gently prise it back. Let the knife do the work. Hear that? Those bones, you want to hear that noise? It should be like butter there. My thumb is behind the tip. I'm pushing down. I'm over the ridge. I'm twisting, turning, and then just letting the knife do the work. My thumb is the guide. Now, I come through there. I'm lifting up the fillet as not to break the salmon. I'm treating it with the utmost respect, and my fingers are behind the blade. Off. From there, carefully lift up. When you come to the rib cage, gently push down on the ribs, not slicing through the bones. There you go. Very carefully find the rib cage. There's the cage. Prise, slice, prise, and slice. Hands behind the salmon. It's all in long, nice, flowing strokes of the fish. You have to be so careful. Through. Once you've gone through the rib cage, place it down. Make sure that's off. Lay the fish back on top, and then make sure that knife, double check, make sure that knife is over, and then just very gently tilt the knife 45 degrees, look at your thumb, and this is gonna come shooting out now, right down through the back, clean, beautiful. And then, and very carefully, there's one side of your salmon through, halfway there. Now, hold the head of the fish, the knife, tilt under, up, and literally just let the knife do the work, and the top of those bones, use the tip of the knife to cut away. Now, through to the tail, keeping the knife tilted up, and then to the tail, up. And then second slice goes in You go through the bones this time, and then literally lift up, holding the tail, pulling the head back, and taking off that center bone. Lift it up. Anytime the knife gets stuck, pull it out, slice through, and then literally use the tip of the knife, the sharpest part, come through. Now, filleting salmon is like an art. Before I could practice on salmon, literally, I had to go through thousands of mackerel. Lift that up, come through, bring the salmon back onto the board. Size of this thing. Get comfortable with it. Lift up the carcass, slice through, and then come off at the top. And that is what you want. A very thin carcass of salmon with hardly any flesh on there and a real great yield. Every time I see the young cooks break down a whole salmon, I try to explain to them that every time there's salmon left on those bones, it's money in the bin. What can we use this for? Great for stocks, very gelatinous, but we cannot afford any salmon on there because every time there's a morsel of salmon on there, we as a business are losing money. Now, looking at the size of this fillet, the secret now is to clean up the actual ends. At the belly of the salmon, this bit here, that's where it's at its fattiest, really delicious, so tasty. So come down those straight lines all the way in. Now that there is the belly. The belly of salmon is featured on every top Japanese restaurant's menu. It's delicious. Eating that raw, absolutely mind-blowing. The flavor is incredible. It's rich, it's oily, it's delicious. Traditionally, especially in Kyoto, they'll finish that with a blowtorch, sort of 30 seconds over the top, and it gives this really nice crackling flavor. Do not waste that. That is beautiful. Now, when we come to portion the salmon, get in control, look at the salmon, and start trimming as you go. Remember, we don't want to see waste. Take a little slice off the tail. Keep all these bits. Absolutely crucial. Slice down there. And then you start formalizing your portion. The higher you go up into the salmon, okay, the thinner you slice. And all I'm doing now is slicing my portions, beautifully done, exactly the same way. After years of practice, you start to see an 8 to 9 ounce fillet of salmon. And so the more you move up into the belly of the salmon, the thinner they go. And like I said, doing this immediately, quickly, you get used to the feel of 8 ounce, 10 ounce, and it's the same with a New York strip or a ribeye. Every portion, we're just cutting once. We're not hacking away. It's a nice clean cut. And then as I get to the top of the salmon, look, get very carefully in, let the knife do the work, and then beautifully lay these out. When you come to the end, keep that belly on there. Do not waste that. And then the final portion with the head, top and tail. Fold it over. And then that is one side. From there, take your second fillet and flip over. And each time now, we're going to match what we've done against those portions. So you start off with your tail. Look with your eyes, measure the width, and use your blade. Sometimes you see the width of the salmon. As you get further into the middle, the portions become thinner because the salmon portion is much longer. So my tail comes off there. And look, we repeat the exercise on the other side now. We match that up. each and every time. Now, I'm a belly person. I'm the kind of guy that absolutely loves that beautiful richness of that belly. Also, it's the bit that a lot of customers tend to turn their nose up against because it looks the fattiest, but it is absolutely incredible. And it's the sort of chef's cut that we never put on the menu in a way that we keep for the chefs. And from there, through, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I learned how to master this whilst working in Paris and being given the responsibility to butcher the fish as it came through. A lot of chefs found it boring, but for me, it's like a work of art because each and every time I got so excited. And then the final bit, top and tail, and then literally trim it up. And look, now, out of that salmon, got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24 portions of salmon. Work that out. $45, $50 a portion, cooked to perfection, is a dream. And that's how you get the yield. Now, pin boning it. Too many chefs start pin boning the salmon whilst it's whole. Therefore, it breaks up. I prefer cutting the portions first and then taking your tweezers, lifting a piece of salmon up, use your finger to pull back. You can just see the bones rising there. Take a pair of tweezers, lift and pull. Now, the secret here is to have a little pot of water, lightly moisten your pliers, grip and pull out. Drop into water. Lift, hold, and pull out. That way, there's no bones hiding, and you get every little bone in there. But for me, look, pull gently, it just pops out. Filleting fish, you've got to find your piece in the most amazing knife. It needs a flexible blade. The best Japanese knives are #1, but a great filleting knife is like a great boning knife. You just need that flexibility around the blade. Don't go into that salmon with a blade that cannot bend because you need to manipulate around that carcass of the salmon and you cannot afford one bad move across that. Look, portions are even, pin bones are out, and it's ready for cooking. When we cook salmon, the skin is your safety net. Why? A, it's delicious as it gets crispier, but more importantly, when we cook it skin side down, it protects the fish. And the secret here with this dish is to get that skin really nice and crispy. Keep the salmon 90% of the time skin side down, so it protects the fish, cooks evenly, and keeps it nice and pink in the center. Also, presentation-wise, in a restaurant, we always serve fish skin side up. Because when you look at the fish skin side up inside the bowl, for me, it looks so much better that way than it does this way. That doesn't say much for me. But when you see that skin that's been crisped and literally stunning, the flavor is incredible. Then we're going to serve it in a beautiful broth with a minestrone of vegetables, frozen peas, zucchini, pasta, and then we're going to glamorize that with some wonderful shellfish, cockles, mussels, and then use the juice from those cockles and mussels, and that becomes the bedrock to the salmon. So it's almost where this salmon meets the sort of the base of the sea, and it elevates with the sweetness of the salmon inside to that delicacy of those cockles and the mussels inside that broth. First off, we're going to score it. If I was to put that in the pan now, it would buckle up because of the heat. So what we do is score it. So we just tighten up the salmon a little bit, pinch it, and then literally sharp knife. 1, 2, 3. That stops the fish from buckling up. So therefore, when it hits the pan, it stays nice and flat. If we have it flat, cooking skin side down, especially with salmon, you can see it going from raw to slightly opaque to pink, and then you flip it, kiss it this side, and it literally takes about 6.5 to 7 minutes to cook. Non-stick pan, first off, get that really nice and hot. Get the salt, and when you season fish and you've scored the skin, get inside, rub that salt inside. Also, it stops the skin from becoming really rubbery because the salt actually takes moisture out of the skin, so it gets really nice and crispy. Season it literally 2 or 3 minutes before. Get it up to room temperature. Too many people make the mistake of cooking fish ice cold. Let the fish relax. Take it out of the fridge for at least 5 or 6 minutes first to get up to room temperature. And it's like cooking a great steak. You never cook a steak ice cold from the fridge because it's impossible to get the temperature into the center. By the time you do, from the outside, it's overcooked. It's the same with fish. Get the fish out. Let it sit for at least 5 minutes to get up to temperature, and then it's going to go into the pan. Get the pan nice and hot first. Never put oil in a pan until the pan's hot. Get the pan hot first, and then put the oil in. If you put the oil in a cold pan, the oil's burnt by the time you get your fish in there. So please, hot pan. Now, oil in. Also, when cooking with a non-stick pan, you use less oil because it's got that amazing flexibility with nothing sticking. So just a touch of oil, literally a teaspoon. Roll it round, turn the gas down, and then take your salmon and lay it away from you. That's the noise. You want to hear that. Fingers on top. That breaks down the fibers of the skin, and that's going to stay nice and crispy. But that's going to cook for about 6 to 7 minutes, okay? And you'll see it traveling all the way from there. You'll see the salmon flesh get lighter as it cooks. Then we'll flip it and kiss it on the bottom. Now, push that to the back. The nice thing about a non-stick pan, once you've got the heat in there, you can actually take it off and let the fish rest anywhere. It can rest on the marble, it can rest on the side, and the thing will continue cooking. So, in my restaurant, we're always letting fish rest. If you let fish rest, then it helps cook it so much more evenly. Really important, and that's the beauty of cooking in a non-stick pan. Now, switch that to the back. Get that on a low gas. And let's start cooking our shellfish. Now, shellfish, what type have we got? Mussels. Now, they've been rinsed under cold water, running water, and all the beards have been pulled off. But the secret behind these is they're jam tight, okay? Never cook a mussel that's open. It indicates that it's dead. These are jam tight, so they're still live. The cockles, again, never cook a cockle that's open, okay? They are purse tight, jam tight, and rinsed under cold water to make sure there's no grain in there. Now, before we start cooking them, we need a bit of depth to the flavour of the actual broth. So, mirepoix. We're going to start off with a little bit of shallot first. And don't worry about leaving the stem on. It's fine. It's a sort of a rough sort of cut. Carrot, celery, fennel, brilliant. Now, this is the base of our stock, okay? So we don't need to be too precious on sort of dices. It's just a rough cut of mirepoix. Get everything ready first. From there, let's take some thyme, a little bit of lemon, and cooking shellfish with lemon at the same time makes that broth so much more fresher. Don't get too precious with the mirepoix. You know, sometimes I've made mirepoix with the skins on, onion skins on, cores on, because it's just the base. Provided it's all nice and clean, it doesn't matter, because I'm going to strain it for a clear broth. You can see what's happening to my salmon. Look, so it's going from rare to pink, and it's traveling all the way through, and it's not cooking too quickly. Beautiful, really beautiful. Now, the secret behind any shellfish to cook it quick, the longer we cook it, the more rubber it gets. So you get everything ready. Now, for the mirepoix vegetables, I've got my lemon thyme. And think about the layers and the textures and the fragrance of this broth. So I've got my wonderful shellfish there, mirepoix, lemon thyme, and then these little babies. Remember the tops of the fennel, so we don't waste them. Again, that's going in with the mirepoix vegetables. Get the pan nice and hot. From there, literally smoking a touch of olive oil. Have to be really quick with this. Vegetables in, lemon in, and bang. Now, no salt, because there's a lot of natural salt inside the shellfish. Shellfish in. Lightly toast them a little bit, okay? I'm gonna put some white wine in there in a minute, but just toast them a little bit so it starts to get that temperature up. Keep the flame really, really hot. And then, once they've toasted, you'll see that really nice caramelized flavor coming out. I'm gonna put some white wine in and then a touch of stock. But, hand on the lid, white wine ready to go, and lid off, white wine in, and then bang. Capture that magic inside. Because what's happening now is those clams are steaming quickly and you'll see them start to open up. Literally, steam, 15 seconds, and it will prise those shells open. Next time in, a touch of stock. Now, the stock, we're starting to formulate that beautiful broth. Remember, the white wine, the vegetables, the lemon thyme, the fennel, and then, of course, a touch of stock. Now, this is chicken stock, which sounds a bit weird with fish, but it goes so beautifully because it gives it body. You can use fish stock or vegetable stock or even water. Lid off, in, and lid back on. The secret when cooking shellfish, the quicker the better, because I want to finish these shellfish inside the broth. So the idea now is to prise those shells open, and you can see literally in real time, in 20 seconds, when I take this pan off, gas off, lid open, look, beautiful. Wow. So it smells fragrant. I've got the lemon in there, the cockles, the mussels, in to a sieve, and look at that magic there. That is beautiful. That is all flavour. Incredible. Now, underneath there is the money, okay? That is that incredible broth. Look at it. Look at that. Give that a good shake, because sometimes inside the shells, it harbours a little bit of the broth. And like I said, I want that flavour in there. But look, give that a really good shake, and then lay out, okay, your cockles. Now, salmon's cooking beautifully. Leave that in the pan. And now look. Let's separate the clams and the mussels. So much easier to do this when they're nice and warm, out with those mussels. They're just cooked. Beautiful. Really beautiful. I mean, like little jewels of the sea. So tasty. Look at the colour of them. They're bursting with flavour. Nice. Beautiful. So important not to overcook these. They literally take seconds. If the pan's hot enough, the quicker, the better. Look, they're still soft and literally still half cooked. Take them out, let them rest. Now, that's the magic. That's the broth that money can't buy. The flavour from that caramelised vegetable to begin with, the lemon thyme, then the fennel, and of course, the shellfish, that flavour coming out of those cockles and the mussels. You can't buy that kind of juice. Impossible. Nice. Now, kiss the salmon each side. You can see how pink that salmon is. The skin is nice and crispy. And gas off, tilt the pan, and baste inside. And then, listen, you can hear that skin? So crisp, so delicious. A touch of lemon juice inside those cracks. And that just lifts the flavor up and is nice and pink in the center. Now, with the broth, bring that back up to the boil. And this is where we start to finish the broth. You can't buy that kind of stock because you need the flavor from the cockles, the mussels, and the wine. Zest of lemon in. I'm gonna get my fennel. These are the bits that are the tops of the fennel. You just drop them in there. But the important part now is to make sure that you don't overboil that sauce. Boil the sauce and it destroys the flavor of those herbs. You bring the sauce up to the boil and then you let it sit and almost simmer with that incredible flavor. If you haven't got fennel, tarragon's wonderful, chervil's beautiful. And then, very carefully, okay, as it comes up to the boil, I'm gonna drop my beautiful shellfish back in there. So my cockles and my mussels go back into the broth, very, very gently. A nice little squeeze of fresh lemon juice, and that just lifts the flavor up. And then how do we take that to the minestrone? How do we get that to that kind of Italian minestrone feel? Here I've got beautiful little frozen peas, leftover vegetables, and that gives that kind of sort of minestrone texture. If I was doing this in the winter, I'd be using winter vegetables. If it was the summer, then of course I'd be doing summer vegetables and finishing it with, you know, baby zucchini, tomatoes, and giving it a nice summery flavor. Now, taste, really important. Now we come in for the seasoning. If I was to season the stock beforehand, you got that saltiness from the clams and the mussels that sometimes tends to make it a little bit too salty. So it's a broth that doesn't boil rapidly. Bring it up to temperature and allow those cockles and mussels to continue cooking. Now, when you serve a broth, it needs to go in a bit of a bowl, okay? That's really important so you get the magic of what's happening inside that broth. But there's two dimensions here because we've got that wonderful minestrone of cockles and mussels and then this beautiful salmon on top. Come to serve, it's easy. Take a bowl. I want that depth in there. Bring my broth back up. I don't boil it, otherwise you'll turn that shellfish really rubbery. And like I said, it's quite an amazing dish on its own without the salmon. This is a beautiful shellfish broth finished with minestrone and vegetables, but the magic's in the broth because you started off with those mirepoix vegetables, lemon thyme, white wine, and then the flavor from your mussels. Up to the boil, off, and then you spoon in. Tilt your spoon first so you get all those wonderful ingredients in there. Because I don't want to flood and drown my bowl. Look, the smell is incredible. Get your vegetables in there first. It's a minestrone, and then go in with the juice. Now look at that. You can see now why it's called the minestrone. A touch of fresh pressed olive oil, and that gives it that nice sort of grassy, rich flavor. And then finally, one more little baste to glaze the top of the salmon. And then look, you get that lemon and you squeeze that fresh lemon juice. Now the skin's so crispy. And you can hear it. You hear that? That's beautiful. Lift that up, drain, and sit that on top of your minestrone. That's a beautiful way of cooking crispy salmon. Pink in the middle, but served with this incredible, fragrant, $1 million broth. Fresh pasta, there's something really exciting about having that chance to make fresh pasta. And if 10 of us stood in a line with the exact same ingredients, I can guarantee you'd have 10 different balls of pasta at the end. It's about the feeling, the touch, and more importantly, getting close to the action. I love making fresh pasta, and more importantly, the time I spent in Italy, they really taught me how to understand what it takes to perfect pasta. We're going to start off with 00 flour, 2 cups of flour. Now, making pasta is important on a cold surface. Marble, for instance, like this, is perfect. 00 flour because it makes the pasta so much finer. And, more importantly, the gluten strands activate so much quicker when the pasta's so much finer. And you'll see it, we're gonna make raviolis, we're gonna do some noodles. So you want that pasta beautifully smooth and almost like a perfect dough. But there are never 2 balls of pasta the same, and you mustn't worry about, this wasn't the same as last week and it wasn't the same as yesterday. You need it, and you work with it to form that perfect texture. That takes time, but understanding it as you go along the way is absolutely crucial. 2 cups of flour in the middle of the marble, and then take a fork and just open this up a little bit. So we're gonna make a little well, okay? So just open that up and form a well. Now, make sure the sides are pretty much even. Don't stress out about this. Something I taught the kids to make from an early age. Seize the center of that well, and then a nice little teaspoon of extra virgin olive oil. That gives the pasta a lot of sheen, a lot of gloss. Now, from there, get your eggs. Generally, 4 whole eggs and 2 egg yolks. Crack the eggs into the bowl first. Now, if you think the eggs are looking a little bit bigger than normal, okay, then just pull back on the amount you put into the flour. 3, 4, and now the egg yolks. So I'm gonna have more egg yolks than egg white because that's gonna give that nice glossy finish, that nice dark yellow texture to my pasta. Now for the yolks, separate, and literally, you can make them with whole eggs all the way, but I much prefer that richness in my pasta and those yolks literally lift it up. So, yolks in, 4 whole eggs, 2 egg yolks. Gently whisk it. Now, it's a lot easier to whisk it here, like this, than it is in the flour. So it's really important to lightly beat your eggs. A lot of individuals put water in the pasta. I'd much rather have more eggs and olive oil than water. Water, oh, it's fine, but yolks, whole eggs, olive oil helps to really strengthen the gluten. More importantly, gives that richness to your pasta. Now, from there, fork in the middle, and you just pour some of your eggs in there. Let's go for 1/3 first. Keep the fork in the middle, flat side down, and what I'm doing here, look, you can see from all the prongs, I'm bringing in more flour. I'm bringing in flour. Try not to let that dam burst. That's why it's great for kids to sort of practice making this, because it's almost sort of scientific, because they cannot afford to let those walls break down. The fork helps to grab in tiny bits of flour, and it's a really exciting way of sort of introducing fresh pasta to the kids. Now, as it starts to form that sort of liquid dough, start to incorporate more flour. It's going a bit dry, and then back in with your eggs again. Now, from there, use the tip of the fork and bring back in again. You can see what I'm doing. Lifting, lifting, lifting all the time. It's great to get the kids involved making fresh pasta like this because they get excited about that kind of pliable dough. Their hands get activated, their minds get inquisitive, and they start this sort of slurry of this volcano that's erupting. They've got to stop it from bursting at the sides. Now, form another hole in the middle now. Put the rest of the eggs, I'm going to hold a little bit back there, about a tablespoon. And now, I'm going to start folding everything into that center bit and catch it. See? Before it rolls out, catch, catch, catch. And what we're doing now is gently incorporating the flour into the eggs. And look, it starts to come together. Now, it's normal for it to look this messy. It is normal, because what we want to do now is get it to a sort of almost like a crumb stage, and then we start forming the dough. Now that is beautiful. It needs a touch more egg. I can see that just from my eyes without touching it and looking at the ratio of flour to dough. And then from there, bring it together It's not going to form as a ball, so don't worry. Okay, so it looks a little bit messy, but that's good. Now, extra flour, really important. Watch off, rings off, everything off, so important. Flour in the hands. Your hands are warm. And now you clean the fork, and then you bring this in. Your palm of the hands start to push, push, roll, roll, roll. Mopping up all that flour, all that olive oil, all that egg. And I'm going round like a big mop. You can see it's just starting to come together. That's normal. Don't panic. When it starts to look a little bit wet, touch more flour and lightly season your hands with flour. If you season the hands with flour, look, it all comes off. And we're going to start shaping this beautiful ball. Now, from there, make sure you mop up all. Take it off the marble. That's the good thing about working on a marble surface. We want to make sure that we clean everything up. Remember, there's ingredients in there. Touch more flour onto the board, and then look. Start adding that flour. You can see this ball of pasta starting to shape. Now, as it starts to form, I'm going to show you how to turn that. But we've still got a touch of pasta on my fingers. To you, it looks a mess. To me, that's a portion. So I want to make sure the flour onto my hands, season the hands with flour, and rub. And you'll see your hands get really nice and clean. And it's a bit bizarre because I see it as a portion of tagliatelle or a ravioli, and I suppose I grew up wanting not to waste anything. And for me, it's that authenticity, watching this being made in the center of Italy. As a 23-year-old chef, I was just amazed of the lack of waste in the grandma's household, and just amazed at what they were doing with their hands and how much it meant to them making that fresh pasta on a daily basis. Now, once you're semi-clean, bring it all back together again, and then knead it all in for the very last time. And look, I'm turning and twisting, turning and twisting. From there, this part of your palm of the hand, that's crucial. My two fingers here come over, and I push in, twist. And what I'm doing now is activating the gluten strands. I'm strengthening the gluten in the flour. As you start activating it, look, touch of flour on there, and make sure this ball is beautiful. Now, sort of touch here when you take your pulse. When you take your pulse, it's the same kind of texture that you're looking for on that pasta. Too much flour, it's going to be dry. Too little flour, and the pasta's going to be wet. Therefore, when we start running it through the machine, it will actually stick. But every 30 seconds needs a light sprinkling. Really important every time to keep your hands nicely floured. That way the pasta never sticks. So use these 4 fingers here. I bring these 4 fingers over, and I use my fist and I push that back in and away. Push in, back in, push in, back in. And you can see what's happening all the time. Don't worry about speed. Literally push and use your weight of your body, just push over it. And what it does, it starts to activate the gluten in the flour. And that gives your pasta is movement. Movement by elasticity, in a way that we can stretch this thing and really take it to a completely different area. After my training in Paris, I traveled around Italy for 6 months, worked on a boat, and every time I wasn't required to become the cook on the boat, I used to dive into these little Italian bistros and sit there and beg, literally beg, to prep vegetables in the side of the kitchen just to watch the grandmas and the nonnas making the most extraordinary pasta. And it was just almost, you know, you couldn't buy that experience. You could never sort of buy that kind of week or month or 6 months. It was just that journey of going in and asking them to understand, and they'd never take me seriously because they never really understood what I was there for. They saw me come off a boat thinking that I was some captain or some deckhand, and no, I was a cook, desperate to understand what they were doing with this pasta and asking all these questions, and couldn't understand a word they were saying to me in Italian. So I was asking these grandmas to write it down and show me a demo, and draw for me and show me how you piece that together. They're working so quick that it was almost too quick for my eyes. But what I did pick up on was the flavor, the understanding, and more importantly, the love of what they were doing. I say to my young cooks every time, you know, you may not be doing something, but you've got to cook with your eyes. You've got to watch with your eyes. You've got to cook and learn with your eyes. It's the best tool you'll ever have. And now look, that beautiful ball of pasta. I can go like this already, and I take that little side bit there and just start rolling it out in between my fingers. I know already that it's going to be a dream inside the pasta machine when I start cranking up, because it's going already, look. So just nip it together. You can see it's retracting because it's just starting to relax. Now it's really pliable. It's soft, it's fragrant, and you know what? Sometimes you can drop in a couple of strands of saffron. You could season it, you know, with a different flavored salt. There's so many ways you can take this. You can put a touch of truffle oil inside the dough. There are so many ways. And that there is beautiful. Look at that. Now, lightly dust that with flour. Nothing sticks if I roll it upside down. The marble's nice and dry. And look, it's pliable. Now, we're going to wrap it to stop the pasta from getting a skin. If it forms a skin, then you'll never ever perfect a ravioli. Once we wrap it, it stops it from oxidizing as well. Now, on, lift it up, wrap it underneath, and make sure it's beautifully covered so there's no areas exposed. If there's any area that's exposed, it will oxidize, it will turn gray, and it will look discolored before you start cooking it. And we want to keep that nice vibrancy. And you'll see it change color in the fridge. The eggs will get richer and it will come out darker into the fridge for 20 minutes. Now, once the pasta's rested, take it out. So it goes a little bit darker, but it looks richer. And look what happens. It's still smooth. Smell it. I mean, it just smells incredible. But look, it's now staying down as we press it because those gluten strands are activated. And for me, this is the best part of making fresh pasta because it's so diverse. You can go so many ways. And if it's a ravioli, or a tortellini, or a lasagna, a cannelloni, tagliatelle, a spaghetti, whatever you want, that's the base. That is it. That's your passport to great Italian dishes. Just there, look at it. And it's incredible to think that this dough can be transformed into something magical, but breathtaking magical, in a way that it's hard to recreate. And like I said, I've never made two balls of pasta ever the same. There's times where I've been thinking, shit, this thing's not working. It's a mess, it's not coming together. But then you get close to it, then you understand it, then you stop, you take a step back and you breathe for 30 seconds and you go back in and you figure it out. You can't read that in a book. You can't pick up the world's best cookbook and understand that you need to do it to get close to it. It's so important. So humble, yet so magical. And the amount of times I've seen customers' faces light up with this incredible ravioli, it's breathtaking, almost in an unselfish way, because you work endlessly to perfect that ravioli, and then you see this thing that's transforming people's minds. 18 years this month, we celebrate Restaurant Gordon Ramsay in Chelsea, and we still have this dish on. Everybody keeps on saying that, why aren't you changing it? Well, we're not going to change it because it's iconic. It feels a bit weird saying that with your own dish, but it's a dish that people travel thousands of miles to come and eat. And it's a dish that we perfect to a standard that is relentless. Day in, day out, we hit that same standard. Crucial. Now we're going to start rolling. Before it goes into the machine, we're going to manipulate it with a little dowel. If you haven't got a dowel, then use a rolling pin. But first, lightly flour everything. Your hands, the surface, the board. And that protects the pasta, so it helps you get it longer. And also, be careful. You can always add flour, but you can never take it away. So just be very, very disciplined. But this is the journey now. We're going to start this incredible journey of stretching this pasta out. However, it's all about the discipline and the understanding. So I'm just almost toying with it now in a way that I'm just letting it know that I'm going to wake it up. So it's all about that understanding and really respecting it. So we cannot over-flour it. Too much flour in there now literally destroys it. Okay, it dries out the pasta. I look at the width of my pasta machine and I look at the width of where we're going. Marble, cold tops, cold surfaces, granite, beautiful because it works beautifully with the pasta. I can't take that any further. Okay, I'm sort of maxed out with my rolling pin. So lightly flour that pasta and then look, roll it out to the thickness of your machine. This is a little domestic, incredible machine, cheap, but they are so versatile. Lightly dust your machine, okay? Never wash this machine, by the way. If you wash this machine, you're in trouble because it's bad for the pasta inside. So lightly flour everything. Every time we use these things, you lightly flour it. That stops the pasta from sticking together. Look at the width of the pasta and look at the width of the machine. So remember, there's your variance. You can't go over that. So we're fine. Rolling this out now like this eases up the pressure of the machine. So on a nice long sort of, stretch, rolling out. But get used to sort of rolling it because it doesn't look that difficult now, but trust me, in a couple of minutes, it will. So position yourself up in a way that you set yourself up for success. We lightly flour everything, the machine, the board, and your hands, and the back of your hands, because we're going to be rolling the pasta through the back of our hands. Now, let's start off at the highest setting, okay? So push that down, through, and then literally halfway through, pull it out. Now, I like to go through the machine twice, 3 times first, just on the first setting. That starts to sort of let the pasta know, hey, I'm gonna get you super thin. So, now, every time you go in there, aerate it, okay? Aerate the pasta. Why? Because it's making it so much more pliable. Again, back in. Catch it early. And then, I want this nice smooth texture. Each and every time. Now I'm ready to start stretching her. But, flour everything. I cannot tell you the importance. It's only flour. It can disappear easily. Keep everything floured. That way, as we're rolling the pasta, it's getting wetter and wetter. And if you flour the surface, it stops it from sticking. So it's really important, okay? That every time you flour, pull out, and then up and back in. Again, look, we haven't even gone down yet in our gradient. We haven't started getting this thing thinner. This is just naturally happening. So from there, one more time through, and then we'll be ready to start cranking it nice and thin. Catch it early, back out, and now we're ready. Okay, here we go. So I position it in a way that I fold it nicely first. So fold it, fold it, fold it, fold it, and then I go back and I come down. So the setting's on 1 now, okay? Lightly floured. I told you every time you flour that thing and it stops it from sticking. Back in. 10 turns, catch. 10 turns, catch. And you fold it this side. And now look what's happening. It's gone up. Again, we've only just started the journey. And this is beautiful because it's just that harmony between you and the machine and manipulating it in a way that you're getting the best out of your pasta and you're taking it to almost like a transparent sheet. Now, again, back of the hand up and lay it out. So we're going to roll this so thin, almost like tracing paper, because it's the perfect way to start forming an amazing ravioli. And if your lobster is part cooked, then your pasta needs to be really thin. And that's the magic. Ten turns, catch. 10 turns, catch. So you keep the thickness of the pasta to the filling. So if your filling is part cooked, then your pasta can be super thin. If your filling is raw, then your pasta has to stay nice and thick. But it's so much more skillful to put a ravioli together with transparent pasta. I like having the lobster cooked and those sheets of pasta really nice and thin so you can actually see the ingredients running through. I got taught that way in London, I got taught that way in Paris, and I got taught that way in Italy because it's just two sheets of pasta that's encapsulating that magical moment or that burst of flavor in the center. Now, you can see what's happening now. Pull through, catch it, really important, and fold. We're folding both sides here. Now, we're only halfway, we're on number 5. We've got 5 more to go, and look. So, through. Just aerating the pasta now and making sure that it doesn't stick. And literally not over dousing it in flour so it dries out. Fold, fold, fold. Each time keeping it nice and smooth. I'm gonna go through number 5 twice. Why? Because I want that smoothness. I don't want any wrinkles in my pasta whatsoever. Catch it, through and fold. Now, this is where it starts to get busy. Down to number 6. And look, one more. And I may need to call my assistant, who's always in the back doing emails or messing around on Tinder. So, here we go. One more time. See how thin it is now. That's way too thick for a ravioli. Even if my filling is raw, it's still too thick. It needs to be wafer thin. Right, down to number 7. Here we go. Catch. Now you can see it. Almost you can see the marble through that. Love it when those shards of light from that bright white marble come through. And now look. Now, it smells rich. The pasta looks expensive, but more importantly, it's absolutely pliable. I'll take it out in the middle there, up, and then we are literally on the home straight. Now, flour the hands, the surface, and lift this gigantic snake up. Look at that. Up she goes. Up she goes. Now that's got to be about 12, 13 feet. And we've still got 3 more areas to go first. Now, bring it back, load it up, and I need, finally, some help. Justin.
Coming.
Put your phone down for 2 seconds.
I can put it down.
Flour your hands, please. This is Justin, my assistant. He's got the best job in the world. Well, I think that anyway. And he's the busiest and the most sought-after individual on Tinder. I'm joking. Relax.
Where do you need me?
Now, I need you. Flour your hands, please.
I have flour in my hand.
Lightly.
Okay.
Now, clap them together. They're hairy arms.
Can we focus on the pasta?
Well, you didn't tell me the arms are so hairy. Dude. Right. Email's done.
Yes.
Ready to roll pasta?
So ready.
So ready. Now, still single?
Yes.
Right. This is the way to perfect a pasta dish, especially for one of those girlfriends that finally say yes. Swipe me. Right. Hands out.
Right.
No, hands.
Yeah.
There you go. Good. Sprinkle those. No, don't rub it off. There you go. Get some flour on that hair. Right, ready? Here we go. And I'll lift it up. No,
Okay,
I'll lift it.
I'll just stand
And
here.
here no, there you go. There you go.
There we
you go. Let it drop down inside. There you go. You got nice soft hands there.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, lift up, up. Now come down the middle. There you go.
There we go.
Now open your arms up a little bit more and pull this down here. Step in a little bit closer. There you go. There you go.
I see.
There you go. Right. From there.
This is the closest I've ever got to making real pasta.
Well, here we go. This is it. Trust me, those dinner parties, they'll be staying for a sleepover. Okay, come back down in the middle. Come back down in the middle. Arms up in the air.
And there we go.
Good man. Aren't you glad you helped me? There you
So
go.
happy.
Now stay there. Stay there. Don't move. Now, that's at number 8. We're going to go down one more. Okay, and there you go. Now stay there. Stay there. Stay there. Stay there. There you go. Right now, back down gently. So we're going to fold this over now. We're going in for the final time. Come with me, please. Down, down. There we go. Excellent. Man, your hands are hot. Huh? Okay, good. Right, ready to go again?
Let's do it.
Let's go. Flour the hands. Now, look how thin this is now. We are getting down to ravioli territory. And this is where it's almost like you can see through it. I can literally see my fingers running through there. And that gives me an indication that we're ready. The lobster's cooked. So all we're doing now is just focusing on cooking the pasta. There's not a ripple in my sheet of pasta, and it's running smooth all the way. Nothing's buckled. And we come out. So there you go.
There you go.
Arms up. So now we're at the max now. The setting, it won't go any thinner than this. The only way we'll get thinner than this if we go through the final mark 3 times. Making raviolis for Marco, in the early days at Harvey's, we had to go through 3 times. Incredible. And then it was just almost transparent. But, step down please just. There you go. Good. Open the arms up.
There we go.
And now, look where we are. For one tiny ball of pasta, we've got meters and meters of luxuriousness. That, I said to you earlier, holds that incredible yield. And there, step down please just. Arms in the air. Don't worry, I'll swipe for you. Up in the air. And there you go. Now, that is how you roll pasta. And look, straight back down. We'll fold. And then we'll gently fold now. Step down towards me, please, just. And then there. So just, all you need to invest in now for that next dinner party is a pasta machine and a bottle of wine.
Okay.
And that's how you roll pasta. Goodbye. I'm going to do a lobster ravioli. I'm going to use the trimmings of the lobster, the claws, the knuckles, and those nice little dainty legs that you thought were just for the bisque. No chance. When you squeeze the lobster meat out there, you'll be surprised. So, start off 1 spoon of the pureed salmon. And it's literally blitzed in a blender or finely chopped, and you add 1 egg white to it, which forms this really nice, strong sort of mousse. And then we bring the lobster, knuckles, the claws, and all the unwanted bits. And I think this is the most important part from a chef's point of view, is that, you know, every ounce of ingredient that comes into that kitchen, we need to make money on. You could be the best chef in the world. How stupid would you look 5 years later going bust? Every product, every herb, every protein, every bottle of wine needs to have a sellable, tangible value on it in order to keep that business afloat. And it's just as important if you're a home chef as well. You buy $150 worth of groceries every week, then that needs to stretch to a family of 6, a family of 4, depending on what you're doing. And so you cannot afford to waste. If there's one thing that I grew up with very early on, and that was respecting ingredients so much that you wasted nothing. Now look what's happened. I've got my lobster, let's call them scraps, lobster knuckle, lobster claw, bound together now by the salmon. So the little bits of salmon that we didn't use, blend, mix that with an egg white, and then puree the salmon. And look, it holds this wonderful glue for your ravioli mix. Now, from there, lightly season it. Lightly salt, pepper, lemon, and let's just take it up a notch with some herbs. Now, what goes beautifully with lobster? It could be a basil, chervil, cilantro. We'd never put rosemary or thyme in there. It's too strong, too powerful. So I like getting some basil leaves. And from there, literally find your largest leaf and then stick the little ones inside. And I'll show you why. So lay them on top like that. And then literally roll them up nice and tight. Almost like a cigar. And then slice it nice and finely. I would like the basil to perfume the inside of that ravioli mix. I don't want to bruise it. Razor sharp knife, and look, I've got these nice thin shards of fragrant basil. But when cutting herbs, look, I want the goodness left in the herb. I don't want the darkness on the board. Every time you see chefs over chop herbs, this dark green board is the most fragrant board anywhere in the world, and the herbs give you nothing. So slice them, chop them once into the mix. And then, what else does it need? It needs acidity. So roll your lemon. When you roll a lemon or a lime like this, it makes it so much more juicy. It bursts those wonderful little cells inside and creates so much more juice. And it's easier to squeeze. But first, I'm a big stickler in wasting nothing, so I take the zest of everything, from oranges to lemons to limes, you name it. Even if I'm not cooking with it, I'll season my salt with the zest, so we've got this fragrant salt. Now, lightly grate the zest of the lemon in. You know, cooking fish is rich. It's extraordinary. The texture is amazing. But what it does need is acidity, because it brings out that natural flavor of the fish and it lifts up the flavor of the fish. And always squeeze fresh lemon juice into the mix at the last minute, okay? And when you slice lemon, I always prefer slicing here, here, and here. So we avoid all the pips. So every time we squeeze lemon in there, there's definitely no pips, rather than slicing the lemon directly in half. So much easier. Lemon juice, give that lobster, it wakes it up. It gives it that nice sharpness to it. And then finally, mix in. And look, already, that mix smells incredible, looks delicious, and look at it. Ready to go. Now, I'm making a lobster ravioli out of the scraps and the leftover bits of lobster. You could do a prawn one. You could bind this with a fresh scallop. Beautiful prawns chopped up, bound together with an egg white, sticks it all together. You need that mixture to stick in the middle so as it holds together in the middle of that ravioli. But the secret behind any ravioli is making sure that it's non-porous. That's basically meaning that there's no water that seeps through. And so when we come to roll that pasta, it's really important. Now, set that, just show you there. Look at that, beautiful. You can identify the chunks of lobster. You can see that salmon barely, but when you smell it, it smells like the sea. It's slightly salty, it's got that fragrance from the basil, and it's beautifully seasoned. Now, set that in the fridge for 10 minutes to get nice and firm while we roll the pasta. Everything gets set. Got my lobster mix there, got my cutter here, and I've got a little egg yolk. An egg yolk, as opposed to an egg wash, which is made with a whole egg, sometimes milk. I need that glue, I need that touch of yolk that really helps to stick that pasta together. Also, think how rich my pasta is. Think about the olive oil and the egg yolks in there. So egg yolk fits the bill. You don't want water there, you don't want milk there, you don't want an egg whipped up. It's just egg yolks, that's nice and strong. Now, the exciting part, lightly season the marble and your hands with the flour. At this point, because the pasta's so thin, be careful not to add too much flour, otherwise it will dry the pasta out. Pull the cling film back, and then look, pick up your sheets and literally start cutting. Now, that's the size of cut I'm going to be using today. And keep them close together. Let's start off with 4. I'm going to show you the basic technique on how to manipulate the pasta together. Now, the secret is literally in the twisting and turning. So get set up. Top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom, and then you can see how transparent that pasta is. Keep that literally covered, okay? That stops it from drying out. Get your mix and spoon the mix into the center of the disc. Really important, okay? Shape it on the spoon first. Try not to shape it on the pasta, otherwise you'll move it all over the place. Shape, shape, shape first on the spoon, and it protects your pasta. Now, I didn't start out making lobster ravioli. You're joking. I needed to practice for months on end with mashed potato because I couldn't afford to get one wrong. So I was never allowed to be let loose on the actual lobster. I had to start off with mashed potato. Once I mastered the mashed potato, then I went to shrimp. After shrimp, I went to salmon. After salmon, I was finally allowed onto the lobster. So delicate. Egg wash around the outside, very, very quickly. No seasoning in the egg wash, doesn't need it. You've got all the seasoning inside. But from there, take up the disc, thumb on the top, there, up and over, and lift up into the air and nip together. But I'm feeding it with this thumb, I'm pulling back with this thumb. So I'm spinning it around, feeding and pulling. So I'm pushing with this thumb, and with my right thumb, I'm pulling it back. Pull, 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 pull. Turn it over, and look, you can see how thin those pasta sheets are, because you can identify the lobster, you can see the basil there. You can actually smell the lemon as well. Now, from there, back over, up, into the air, and you nip. You nip very carefully, and make sure that you do not pierce those sheets of pasta. Now, raviolis, we take to another height in Chelsea where we trim them, cut them, but if I was doing this at home, you wouldn't need to trim them. And then look, back on top. Too much mix in there, be careful, you'll burst them. So start off with an average amount of mix, and then go for the maximum. Get the confidence first, feel the pasta. You're gonna screw these up, don't worry about it, so please don't stress out. And then finally, look, keep that height on top and that height on the bottom as well. So when it sits on the plate, it's got that beautiful round style. Now, once you've shaped these beautiful raviolis, give them a little bit of a haircut. That means basically taking off any excess pasta that you don't require. If I was doing this at home, I'd be cooking it like that, beautiful. In the restaurants, then we take our cutter, we just come over the top, push down, spin it around. So you've got these nice little sort of large, I call them lobster eyeballs. So you've got that nice sort of quirky, beautiful shaped, delicate ravioli. Again, come in there, shape it beautifully, turn it around, and give it a little trim. We call this haircuts. You can see a beautiful shape now. So look, let's pretend my marble's a plate for a minute and look already how they're sitting. And so, last one, come in, push down, turn it around. Now, you can go fluted edge. You can go a little bit fancy if you wanted. I just like the plain edge. And look, I want those points hitting the side. 1, 2, 3, beautiful raviolis. Now, for the cooking. You've gone through all that work. You need to treat these things with the utmost respect. They're going to take literally 90 seconds to cook because all we're cooking is the pasta and reheating that, filling in the center. So, I've got a beautiful lobster stock here that was made out of all those shells, slowly roasted, water, fennel, carrots, onions, and there's this amazing stock. From that stock, we've taken out 3 cups and reduced down to a sort of, almost like a lobster bisque essence. And you just reduce it down like a syrup, and that's what's gonna go over the ravioli. But first off, don't boil the ravioli rapidly, you'll burst them, so you get a gentle boil. Get the temperature rolling beautifully, season the water nicely, lift up the raviolis in your hand, and then, very carefully, sort of put them in and spin them. That stops them from sticking to each other. And then, really important, just turn the pan. That stops anything from sticking on the bottom. Bring the temperature of the water back up, and literally, you'll see them float gently. Don't boil them rapidly, literally 90 seconds. Because the magic of a ravioli is that burst of flavor in the middle. For me, the secret is making sure no water seeps in. Even though it's a lobster stock it's been cooked in, it'll help stain the pasta, but you want that magic inside. Really important. Now, as they're cooking, get your plate ready. My bowl, the ravioli comes out. We're gonna season them in the bowl, glaze them with vinaigrette, and then set them on. Now, in here, I've just got a beautiful sort of fresh tomato chutney. And it's basically chopped tomatoes, lightly roasted, and then almost stewed for about 20 minutes, finished with some fresh basil. So, stop, turn down, be careful. You can see the ravioli starting to lift. Now, the plate. We're going for 3 raviolis on the plate. I'm gonna go on 1. That's my bedrock. That's the base. 2. Never slide food on a plate. Look at it, position it, and be confident it stays there. You start sliding food around, it goes all over the place. 10 seconds and the raviolis are coming out. Now, spider. We can go in, lift up, into the bowl. Inside the glass bowl, classic vinaigrette, olive oil, lemon juice, and a touch of salt. Glaze the bowl with the vinaigrette. Gently come underneath. Raviolis out. And then lightly, and I mean lightly, season, touch of salt, a light sprinkling of lemon zest, that's natural because of the lobster again. And then finally, look, you roll them round that vinaigrette. You let those raviolis sort of steep in there for 10 seconds. And then very carefully, not with a fork, not with a knife, but with a spoon, because it sits in beautifully with that ravioli. Look, you lift them up. You place each one on top of that wonderful fresh tomato chutney. I want the points coming in to each other. And that's my little bedrock I said earlier. That's the bit that gives my plate the height. Turn the plate round towards you. Don't go over the plate in case you drip into it. And just get those points sitting in. Now from there, you've got your lobster stock. Go over each ravioli once. And it's a sort of lobster glaze. And then finally, with your vinaigrette, and this is the classic vinaigrette that literally just cuts in to the richness. And then we've got our micro sorrel, our micro herbs, and look, you just let that sit beautifully. When I say sit, I want a bit of height. Micro basil, micro sorrel, and just give it a touch of elegance. Literally 2 things on the plate. Your fresh tomato chutney and your beautiful ravioli. But give it some finesse. Let it sit naturally. That, for me, is how to perfect a beautiful ravioli of lobster. Beautiful. Let's start off with the beef, because here we've got the most amazing ribeye. But look at it. The fat and the lining of that ribeye is incredible. It's a steak that needs a proper sear, because you have to have the confidence to render that fat. The heavier the sear, the more flavoursome it is. But it took me years to be able to afford to have such an incredible meat on my menu. It is to die for. It is the chef's dream cut. More importantly, one of the most sought after cuts anywhere in the world. You can identify the quality of the beef, just in the lining of the marbling, the distribution of the marbling from left to right, the dark redness of the meat, and then the condition in general of the steak. I mean, it looks good enough to eat raw. In fact, in certain areas in Japan, they do eat it raw. And in my restaurant in Vegas, we have the rib cap, which is this amazing cap of beautifully marbled meat, sits underneath the ribeye. We have to go through about 12 ribeye to get one rib cap, and it's become the dream cut, the most sought after cut. Filet mignon, again, one of the most recognized cuts anywhere in the world, but the one that just tastes like butter. You cut through it and it's just incredible. It's the Rolls Royce of a cut. It's stunning, it's lined beautifully, sufficiently sort of trimmed, just the right amount of fat on there. And again, a kind of protein that literally needs minutes, literally minutes in the pan with a gentle sear, a touch of oil, finished with butter, and nothing else needs doing to it because it is perfection. In my first ever restaurant, it took us 3 years to have a filet on the menu. We started off with the oxtail, and then we went to the skirt, then the hanger, then the New York strip, and then finally we got to the filet, a dream. Some of the cheaper cuts that are more prominent in restaurants across the globe now. Lamb shanks. Look at it. It doesn't look tasty. It doesn't look much, but beautifully searing that, roasting it, braisening it for 3.5, 4 hours, watching that meat slide down the shank, and then shredding those pockets of deliciousness, incredible. Slightly mature, slightly sort of deep in flavor, but a lamb shank, the longer you cook it, in fact, the more you overcook it, the better it tastes. And then to this, the bone marrow, which has to be one of the most intimidating cuts in any restaurant. We grill these, we make the most amazing butter. We even finish sauces with that bone marrow inside there. Incredibly healthy. More importantly, the flavor is extraordinary. Now these, they don't look much, but these are pork cheeks. And again, 10, 15 years ago, you could hardly find these on menus. Now, prominent in some of the best and some of the most fine dining restaurants anywhere in the world. A pork cheek, again, needs a gentle sear. It needs that kind of spice to lift it up. And more importantly, braising them. The flavor is incredible. Breaking those pork cheeks over a wonderful truffled mashed potatoes is to die for. For me, this is a special place in my heart because this is how we started. These are very cheap cuts, and why does it hold a special place in my heart? You know, when I first opened my restaurant in the 90s, we couldn't afford expensive cuts. We had to take those cheap cuts, elevate them into expensive dishes. You know, I didn't even know if I'd be open in 6 months' time, so we had to go through oxtail, lamb shank, pork cheeks, offal, liver, kidneys, braised heart, because based on my experience in France and mastering those cheap cuts, it really taught me how to make money out of incredibly cheap cuts, unwanted cheap cuts. And I think that's the big secret of any chef today, is getting that humble, cheap cut, elevating it to something magical that, you know, you've got no problems paying a fortune for. So these kind of proteins remain a staple on my menus across the globe. But I look at them now thinking, 25 years later, that's how I started. I needed to perfect an oxtail beautifully before I could get my hands on a fillet. I couldn't afford to grab an amazing ribeye with that incredible marble. We had to go to New York strip. We had to get sirloin. We had to use rumps of lamb. We were never allowed to purchase such extraordinary ingredients. So you master the cheap ingredients, you elevate them beyond belief, you get the restaurant turning into cash positive, which then gives you so much more freedom to afford another cook in the kitchen, to afford luxury ingredients. And then, once you've got the customers eating out the palms of your hand, the business starts to take off. So this is an array of incredible ingredients that, to be honest, hand on heart, I'm far more comfortable with the cheaper cuts because that's how I started. And even at home with mum, we didn't have a steak or a filet mignon. Those things were a pipe dream. So we had ham hock, we had knuckles, we had oxtail, and we loved it. In those days, you know, it was rude to ignore or to leave anything on your plate. So when I see these shanks, offal, cheeks, bavettes, hanger steak on menus, it's my first go-to because I think you need to eat 100 dishes of oxtail
first before you get to eat a decent ribeye to appreciate the difference in the texture. Fillet of beef Wellington. This has to be the ultimate go-to showstopper. Back in 1998, we breathed a breath of fresh air back into this old fart of a dish because it was known as beef en croûte and it became bastardized. We fell out of love with it and we brought it back. Cast iron pan. Why? You know, cast iron pans are like gold dust. Once you've got one, look after it, invest in it, and sort of it becomes your best friend in the kitchen. Now we've got the middle sector of the fillet of beef. You've got the Chateaubriand at the top and the tail here that's generally made into sort of tartare and stroganoffs. So ask your butcher for the center cut. This thing's gonna go to at least 5 or 6 portions because we're gonna wrap it up and then encase this thing in the most amazing puff pastry, and you'll see it when it hits the table. It's breathtaking. Get that pan nice and hot first. Season, salt and pepper. Now, take the beef out of the fridge at least 10 minutes before you start cooking it and roll it up in a way that we roll it in film to get it nice and cylinder shape, okay? Basically, if we roll it properly now, so it's sort of nice and round, perfectly done, it helps shape it when it's wrapped in pastry. So, yeah, I'm a big stickler to make sure that you season it properly, because the one thing about a Wellington, once you've cooked it, you can't season it. So you've got to season it properly beforehand. And think of the layers. We're going to season this now, lightly sear it, and then from there, wrap it up in a savory crepe, lined with mushrooms, lined with Parma ham, and then finally, on top of that, this beautiful rich puff pastry. Now, season it beautifully all the way through and push that seasoning in there. Just get a little bit firm with it so you sort of almost roll the seasoning into the beef. You can see it's almost sort of impregnated inside. You want that flavor going through the beef. Get the pan smoking and then a touch of oil. Now, the beauty about cast iron, it gives so much more flavor and depth to the dish. Get the pan nice and hot, beef in. Now, the secret here is literally searing it for 60 seconds each side, nothing more than that. All we're doing now is locking in those juices. So, roll it over, tilt the pan, let the back of the cast iron pan cook the back of the steak. When I say literally 60 seconds each side, it does mean 60 seconds. If we don't sear the steak to begin with, your meat turns grey and sort of horrible. So sear it in. It's a fillet, okay? So therefore, hardly any fat in there. So don't get too aggressive with the sear. A gentle sear. Roll it away from you and roll it towards you. Let the pan do the work. The flavour inside this cast iron pan is legendary. So much more flavour because it's a great heat conductor. It's obviously a heavy, weighted pan, but the caramelisation allows the meat to sort of colour without burning. Now look, from there, hold it up, sear the ends as well, both sides, because that's where the juice is going to run out if you don't sear that meat in. Up, again. So you're locking in that flavour. It's so important, really important to sear both ends and around. Now you can see the colour on there. Take that out. And then from there, cover that beef in its own juice. Now, get your mustard. Now, Dijon mustard, pastry brush, and brush your steak. And here's the important part. You've got to do this while that fillet is nice and warm. And the reason being, if you do this when it's nice and warm, the actual mustard seeps into the center. Once it's nice and warm, it absorbs the mustard so much more, so much easier. Roll it over and be quite generous with the mustard. Now, I'm using Dijon. You could use English mustard, but the nice thing about the Dijon mustard is that it's quite sweet, so it's not aggressive. The English mustard is quite raw, so it's quite strong, and
This is a fillet, so you want to be a little bit more sort of gentler with the flavorings on there. Now, as you can see, over a period of sort of 3 or 4 minutes, that mustard will disappear and it will melt into the beef. What does that do? It actually tenderizes the fillet. So when we come to slice this thing, it's almost like a sort of, like a sheet of butter, because you've got that nice heat running through the fillet. It seasons it and sort of almost props it up a little bit. It's a filet mignon, best cut anywhere in the world, but touch of mustard on there that seeps through, tenderizes it, marinades it, and gives it that little bit of heat at the back of the Wellington. Now, once that sits and rests with the mustard just sort of steeping in there, okay, the most important thing now is to start layering it up. On the base, we're gonna have a savory pancake. These are just beautiful crepes, thinly done, a little bit of chives in there and thyme flowers. So when you smell this, close your eyes, it's almost like a sort of savory pancake. But it's quite sort of wild with the seasoning. Beautiful thyme flowers, fresh chives in there. The thinner you get these things, the better. Now, really important, it stays nice and thin because you don't want it to become too spongy. The thicker the crepe, the more spongier the texture is. So I want a nice, thin lining. From there, we're gonna season it with this beautiful Parma ham. So this is taken from the top of the jambon. So it's a beautiful sort of cured, salted ham. Again, great flavoring. And then next to that, the sort of rustic charm of this dish are these flat cap mushrooms. Mushrooms for grilling, basically. They've been chopped and literally sauteed with a touch of olive oil, thyme flowers, and then just left to sort of steep. So think of the flavors. Filet mignon, you've got that wonderful mustard heat running through, savory crepe, and then that saltiness from that Parma ham, all wrapped around this incredible filet. Now, you could do this without the crepes, but it takes the pastry so much more sort of soggier. So be careful. You could do it without the Parma ham, but then there's no seasoning around the outside of that beautiful steak. So, you know, this is my interpretation, how we've modernized this old fart of a classic and given it a breath of fresh air that sort of brings the table to light. Now, film. Get your cloth and just wet the surface of that. I'll explain why. When you're using plastic wrap, wet the surface, okay, very, very gently. And look, what happens now is that your actual cling film sticks to that. So nothing buckles up, okay? So it stays nice and flat. And what we're looking for is this sort of envelope that we can literally sort of stick this whole thing together. Because remember, I want that cylinder formation. The tighter we roll this, the more evenly it's going to cook. Now, the scary thought about this fillet of beef Wellington is that since we adapted it and modernized this incredible dish, we have just recently sold our 1 millionth Wellington. Now, fuck me, just think about all those cows. 1 millionth Wellington. That's why it's so special. Claridge's, it was that go-to dish that customers were literally ringing up for and saying, hey, we've got an anniversary, my parents' wedding. Can we have fillet of beef Wellingtons for the chef table? So it's a great dish to celebrate, but also it's a showstopper. Get this right, and you become the sort of host of every goddamn dinner party throughout the year. Cling film, nice and flat. From there, we're gonna start layering this up. You take your crepes on, okay? But the most important thing here is to make sure the roll is big enough. So all we do first is just trim this thing, give it a little haircut, go top and bottom, and then literally off to the sides. Those round bits, a little bit unwanted. So from there, lay it out and look at the length of each crepe. Literally, if you're doing this for 3, then obviously you don't need to have such a big platform. I like to make sure that this thing is wrapped and insulated so we got all that protection zone going over it. The secret behind this dish is in the preparation. Get this right, Once it's wrapped in pastry, the easiest job is cooking it, trust me. Now, from there, look at the roll, and then literally, same length, up, take off 1/3 of that, and start laying this up. Now, crepe on there. Literally, beautifully done. The width of my crepe is the width of the beef. From there, this incredible Parma ham. You can start to see how we're layering this up. The nice thing about this is that it's sort of done as a bit of a party piece. So if you can do this the day before, let this set in the fridge, it's pretty incredible. It gives so much joy to the table. It's breathtaking. Crepe, Parma ham, and now the mushrooms. So the mushrooms have been cooked gently in olive oil. Don't squeeze them out. Don't remove that flavor. This is the earthiness of this dish, where it goes super rich, super delicious, but brings some earthiness that helps that texture, especially from the richness of the pastry as well. Chopped mushrooms. In the middle of the season of porcini and ceps, we'll do a cep d'Uxelles. That's a chopped mushroom d'Uxelles, but with ceps is incredible. Slightly salty, but amazing. You put your mushrooms on, and think of the textures now, and the layers, and the flavoring. Think what's happening. Mushrooms, you spread over your Parma ham. And then, literally, from there, I'm just gonna lightly season that again over the top. Don't forget, when this thing gets wrapped, okay, we can't season it after it's cooked. You're done. It needs to be done now. So take a spoon, straighten all this up, make sure it's laid out evenly, and then watch. This is the crucial stage, stage number 1. I'm gonna take all that resting juice from inside the beef over those mushrooms. Don't waste that. That flavor there, you can't buy in a cube. You can't buy in a stock. That's just flavor that's given to you. That's an extra bonus. Those mushrooms now already taste fucking delicious. From there, sit your beef into the middle. After that, lift up your cling film and then very carefully roll. But roll it in a way that we're searing that in there. Look. So we're just rolling that nice and tight. And then with your hands here, pinch, roll it nice and tight. That's really important. Stage 1 done. Tighten at the ends. It literally looks like a Swiss roll. Just done. Tuck that underneath. Tuck that underneath. And then let that set in the fridge for 20 minutes. Now, as that beef cools down, it starts to stick the mushrooms and then the Parma ham and then the crepe. So you've got these wonderful layers of flavor and texture that stick into that beef. And you can see the protection zone. I'm rolling it nice and tight like that because if it's rolled nice and tight, it will set nice and tight in the fridge. 20 minutes inside the fridge or a quick blast in the freezer for 5 minutes. Little clear down. Now, once that's setting in the fridge, second stage with your plastic wrap. You can do this with tin foil. It works just as well, but plastic wrap gives it that much tighter cylinder shape. And if it's rolled tighter, then it cooks more evenly. Also the yield out of it as well. We almost sort of stretch the fillet so it doesn't get too plump in the center in a way that we can sort of maximize the portions on that. Now, roll out the cling film. 3 layers this time, over the board. And then we're gonna put our puff pastry on there. Now, this helps us protect the pastry in a way that we don't tear the pastry. So, plastic wrap, nice and flat. Puff pastry, out. Now, puff pastry rolled nice and thin. Look at the width of your fillet, and then just practice rolling that over. That's what we're going to do in terms of the cylinder. Make sure there's no holes in the pastry. Take a little dowel and just roll the pastry out a touch thinner so we get that nice even coating. Now, from there, literally trim up the pastry before you start rolling. Now, from there, literally up, and then just gently roll the ends so as when they meet in the middle, okay, it stays nice and locked in. Beef out. The most important thing now is that this is set, so it stays nice and firm. But with the pastry out, we need to be a little bit sort of quick. You can see where I rolled the ends. From there, place that on, literally 1/3 up. Take your egg wash and then lightly brush. Now, brush the top part over. And the important part here is to make sure that that pastry sticks to the crepe. So, lightly across. And then from there, really important, season the inside of the pastry. Not many chefs do that. What that does, it helps take the moisture out of the beef and stops the pastry from becoming soggy. And then when we slice through it, the pastry's nice and crisp. After that, lift that up, and the same technique as we did earlier with the crepes, and you lift up and you roll that over, and you roll and let that stick underneath, massaging the pastry out, lift up that layer of plastic wrap and tuck in the pastry and roll that over. Really important to roll that over. Now, once we get there, come to the end and twist. Twist, twist, and twist. Now we can get really complicated and fold that pastry into the end, but the secret here is just to sort of twist and turn it in to the fillet. What that does, it starts to melt the pastry. And very carefully trim off the cling film and twist in, look, twist in. Turn that around, twist that in. Don't fold it, twist it in. Once it's twisted in, the actual pastry will melt beautifully into one another. And then from there, cut off the ends, cut off the ends, unwrap your Wellington very carefully, literally. Tuck in those ends, tuck in the end there. You can see it's beautifully wrapped Wellington. That, before we start cooking that, we're gonna egg wash it. Now, the reason why we egg wash it now is we get that nice dark golden color. So, nice long strokes. And make sure you egg wash underneath. You can see how we can stretch this to literally 4 or 5 portions at a time. The secret here is to be quick. I'm using egg yolk only, so it's a nice, dark, deep varnish, okay? And if you like me, you want that nice, even coat, egg wash it 2 or 3 times. Keep it in your hand. Make sure you egg wash down the sides. And then from there, okay, get your tray that you're gonna be cooking it on ready. Because once this is glazed, we set it in the fridge for 5 minutes before we get it into the oven. Now, before we do that, let's decorate this. So, put your knife down the back part. Hold it with your index in and twist. And all we're doing here is just literally lightly scoring that pastry, turn it round. I'm twisting the knife. Twist, twist. Don't go too deep, otherwise you're going to pierce the pastry. And then, from there, she's ready to chill. Get your paper ready with your greaseproof paper on there. Set. Put that on top. It's really important now. We let that set in the fridge for 5 minutes. On final garnish, a sprinkling of rock salt, finely. And then that helps take the moisture out of the pastry, stops it from going soggy. Get your scissors, trim a couple of sprigs of your thyme. I like the thyme on top of here because it's a sort of soft herb and it just sits beautifully. Bunch them together and then literally find your center point and just literally gently press that in there. Set that in the fridge now for 5 minutes so it firms up yet again. It relaxes the pastry and that crepe sticks the inside of your puff pastry, ready for the oven. Now, the secret of cooking a great Wellington is to let it hit the table minutes from the oven. It needs to relax for 5 minutes before you slice it. So if I was having a dinner party now and you were coming around to my house, I would time 20 minutes in the oven. 18 to 20 minutes, literally 380 degrees in, start your appetizers, and then literally get that Wellington into the oven. In she goes, into the center of the oven. We want that air circulating round. Sit your guests down. Wellington's in, enjoy it, because when that comes out, you're never going to see friends and family as excited as you will do when you take that first slice off. Now, look, I mean, come on. It's beautiful. I mean, it looks incredible. We haven't even sliced through there yet. Gently remove the Wellington from the tray. You can always tell you did a great job because there's no leakage on the paper. Really important to see that. That flavor is all inside. You lift that up. On to your board. Gently pull out. Now that hits the table just like that. Now, quick sharpen. This piece here is always the chef's favorite because that's the sort of rich, buttery pastry that's been jammed into the fillet. But that's not the hero. The hero is the next slice that comes off that. So when this goes to the table in my house, I take that one off, save that for later. I take one beautiful slice off, take my time, put that back on to my little garden, and then slice first. And in kitchens, we fight for this bit at the end because it's just like the bit that every chef wants. Look, out comes the juice. Oh, man. And now, the first slice. Hear that pastry, crispy as anything. You slice through and bang, look. The $1 Million Wellington. Fuck me, that's beautiful.
I never cooked for money. Let's get that right. But I never went into a restaurant to become a fucking multi-millionaire. I'm gonna be honest as shit here. So I didn't start this career because I wanted to become famous. I didn't start because I wanted to write 20 books or have TV shows. You know, I had a burning desire to get to the very top. Finding your passion in life is the most important thing you can do. Stop worrying about a bonus and a financial security. Find a passion, because everything else falls into place once you've got that track set to climb the ladder and you're passionate about it. Being a chef for me was not about flipping burgers and dressing Caesar salad. You know, for me it was about getting to the very top. There's always a struggle to perfection. I don't give a shit what anyone says, whether you're an athlete, Olympic gold medalist, or, you know, an NBA star or a soccer player. There's a struggle. There's that sort of behind the scenes thing that you never see. There's this huge struggle. So it's character forming. And my first star was won in 95. My second star was won in 98. My third star was won in 2001. 6 years, 0 to 3 stars. That's fucking rapid. To become a great chef, it's about vulnerability. Being vulnerable is about being stripped of everything you've got and realizing who you are. It's the most exciting place to be in, because it's not about the sort of support, entourage, flash cars, incredible ingredients. It's about you. And that's a really important place to visit 2 or 3 times a year. It keeps you on that line and it keeps you grounded. That's so important for a young chef today, to get out of their comfort zone and to learn more with different environments, different cultures, and different languages, because your palate speaks so many languages. I'll position myself in the middle of a fucking jungle in India, 50 meters from Nagaland, from the border, and be dropped into a culture that there's not even a phone there. That's how excited I still am to go out and find new, vibrant ideas. I've never done anything that I regretted. I've made mistakes. Fuck me, I've made mistakes. But I learn from them quickly. The most important question I'm always asked, you're at the very top, what would you do if you lost the 3rd star? I'd fucking win it back. That's what I'd do. What am I gonna do, sit there and cry my eyes out in the corner? No, I'm gonna win it back. I'm that determined. That is my DNA, fucking determined. And it's gonna take more than a star to knock me down, more than a critic to knock me off the pedestal, because I'll come back. But when I come back, I'm gonna kick your fucking ass. This masterclass for me is about someone that loves food. Even if you're not interested in becoming a chef or running a restaurant, just being a foodie, knowing what works is important. Knowing how to put food on a plate is crucial. It's really satisfying to teach others what we've got, garnered, learned, understood. If they become more successful than me, I'm gonna be the happiest pig in shit there is alive. Yeah, watch and learn, but do me a favor after you've watched and learned. Go and fucking cook.